Planning a trip to Washington, D.C.? Or do you just want to be submerged in the sights and sounds of our nation's capital from your armchair? You are at the right place. Here's my expert's guide to visiting Washington, D.C. We've been living on the road full-time for 30 years. We've been to every state in the country, most of them many times over, and we've visited almost every national park unit the U.S. has to offer. We've toured most of the state capitals and visited dozens and dozens of fascinating museums. Plus, we've hiked over 10,000 miles from Alaska to Florida and from Maine to Hawaii. Since experience is the best teacher, I am confident that my week in Washington, D.C. will be just what you need to decide what to do when you embark on a visit to our nation's capital. Beyond day-by-day suggestions, I have intertwined valid travel tips. Most of what you will be exploring is found along the National Mall or only a few blocks away. But wait, gotta tell you that after day 6 is complete, I have included our extreme visit to Arlington National Cemetery, which would wrap up your week. A don't miss while in D.C. Now for your week itinerary to Washington, D.C. with Unclassic Road Trip. Welcome to day 1 at the National Mall. Walking into America's heart, our Washington, D.C. adventure. This was our deep dive into the western end of the National Mall. A full day of fast walking, consuming history, deep reflection, and let's be honest, learning some travel lessons the hard way. This place is Overload City. My history meter pegged more than once, and so will yours. This giant field trip has been on my bucket list for a long time, and we were determined to soak in as much of the city's story as possible, from the solemn beauty of the war memorials to standing where a who's who of American historical figures have stood. It really felt like reaching deep inside to America's heart. We covered over 5 miles. Well, that's my best guess. On foot. Note to future self, never break in brand new flip-flops on a walking tour. But the stunning sights and moving stories made every step worth it. Day 1 was all about monuments, memorials, and a few surprises, including an all-day closure at a few places, including at the Washington Monument. And I came up with some clever workarounds that I'll share along the way. Whether you're planning your own DC itinerary or just want a front row seat to this incredible city from your armchair or driver's seat in that 18-wheeler, I hope this video gives all of you inspiration and some practical travel tips. So grab a coffee or maybe a virtual Polish dog piled with onions and relish and come along as I guide you through each stop with rewarding stories, old and new photos, and moments that really stood out as you travel across America with me. I had compiled a to-do list, and believe me, I checked it more than twice. Organization and planning can make or break your trip to complex places like Washington, D.C. As we stroll around the sites, I'll be filling you in on details with loads of personal comments. I'm giving you 6 hours of wild tourist trekking in less than 1 hour. You are going to see so many sights on the western end of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. that you are going to be planning your trip there soon. Enjoy this informative, fast-paced ride. Sit back. You're not going to believe how much we can accomplish in just one day. We parked in an underground parking garage in a federal building just southeast of the Washington Monument at 12th Street Southwest and D Street Southwest. I was told that parking was difficult to find and very expensive. Well, we found it quickly, and it only cost $17 for the day. We did have to walk about 8 blocks to reach the ticket booth in the lodge at the Washington Monument. I had missed getting timed tickets online because they were booked over 2 weeks out. I didn't realize that we would have needed to plan so far ahead, like 30 days in advance if possible. I saw that you can maybe get same-day tickets at 8:45 in the morning. We picked our son up at Ronald Reagan National Airport that morning. Opened in 1941, the airport is a quick 5 miles from Washington, D.C. We didn't get parked into the Washington Monument ticket booth at the lodge until 11 a.m., which was not only way too late for the same-day tickets, but you know what? It didn't matter. The monument was closed that day for maintenance. I later read that it is closed one day during the first week of each month for routine maintenance. Really? Who could have imagined? Even though I pored over gobs of information before venturing out, I missed some things. It happens to the best of us. As we progress in this 4-day trip, I will share other workarounds that had to be accomplished. I hope my mistakes, unexpected closures, and bad weather will encourage you. I will let you in on a secret. We got same-day tickets for day 2, but you won't believe what happened when it was time to go up in the elevator to the observation deck. Let's start at the Washington Monument. monument where our day at the National Mall officially began, even if it didn't quite go as planned. It was tremendous and wonderful, as you shall see. At about 555 feet, the Washington Monument was the tallest stone structure in the world when it was completed in 1884. I found that the exact measurement is supposedly 555 feet and 5 1/8 inches tall. That's pretty funny because 1/8 is a number I throw around all the time. The Washington Monument honors America's first president, General George Washington. You can spot the color change in the stone about a third of the way up, a result of construction delays. What? Construction began in 1848, but was interrupted by lack of funds and the Civil War. I didn't realize what a steep walk it was to reach the base of the monument from the lodge. The monument base rests on a deep foundation. The structure's design changed midway. The original plan included a colonnade, which was dropped in favor of a simple obelisk shape. We are going to get up to the observation deck, but not today. You will want to see how that semi-debacle played out and how it was still thrilling. A pro tip here, the building is open 9 to 5 daily, unless closed for maintenance. Get your reservations for the elevator online in advance. You will be glad you did, for the observation deck provides unparalleled views. Restrooms are at the lodge, along with the ticket booth, gift shop, and park passport book stamps. An architect alert? This is the tallest and most commanding structure in Washington, D.C. and is seen in part from almost everywhere. And here's a creator's note. From August 17, 2016 to September 19, 2019, the observation deck of the Washington Monument was closed. During that 3-year period, the Park Service completed elevator upgrades and installed a new permanent security screening facility. Next, we spied the Jefferson Pier marker, Jefferson Stone or the Jefferson Pier Stone. You know me and geographic landmarks. I had to touch this one. This small stone once marked Thomas Jefferson's intended prime meridian for the U.S. Though never adopted, it remains a fascinating footnote in early American geography. This stone marks the Jefferson Pier, intended as a prime meridian line proposed by Thomas Jefferson, aligning with the White House and the Capitol. The original marker was placed in 1804, replacing an earlier wooden post. But over time it was lost or displaced, and the current stone was erected in 1889 above the recovered original. Interestingly, the inscription once included being the center point of the District of Columbia, but that line has been chiseled away. The United States eventually adopted the Greenwich Meridian in 1912. So the Jefferson Pier was never officially used as a national prime meridian. Geographer alert, it does mark the second prime meridian of the United States, even though it was never officially recognized either by presidential proclamation or by a resolution or act of Congress. Pro tip, this is literally on the lawn of the northwestern walk path away from the Washington Monument. Most folks passing by aren't giving it an honest nod. Next, let's head to the ellipse, the site of the National Christmas Tree, the Transcontinental Lincoln Highway marker, and surrounding grounds of the White House. I will be jumping ahead a few times as I present things we found and learned at the White House Visitor Center as it applies to what I am presenting right now. The ellipse at President's Park is a wide open park just south of the White House. The day of our visit, it was filled with tourists, geese, and goose poop. Watch your step, as you will be taken aback by the southern view of the White House. The ellipse is part of President's Park, which is a larger historic reserve area, including the White House grounds and Lafayette Park. The ellipse is home to seasonal events like the National Christmas Tree lighting and, historically, has served as a military drill field. This has been a place of free speech, one of the basic foundations of American liberty. President Calvin Coolidge started a holiday tradition in 1923 by hosting the first lighting of the National Christmas Tree. Since then, the tree lighting ceremony has undergone many changes, sometimes using special effects. There wasn't a tree there, but the information said a more permanent National Christmas Tree was planted on the ellipse in 1973. I wonder what happened to it. Front and center, the Transcontinental Lincoln Highway marker drew my attention. People were leaning on it, so I had to wait to take photos for you and be able to read what the marker had etched on it. Why do people do this? It drives me bonkers. The zero milestone located in the ellipse was also erected in 1923. It was intended to serve as a reference point from which road distances are measured in the United States. This well-placed marker commemorates the start of the Lincoln Highway, the first coast-to-coast highway in the United States, stretching from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. Geographer alert, the Lincoln Highway marker, the starting point for the first U.S. transcontinental highway, is part of the city's rich roadway history, connecting the city to a grand national vision of cross-country travel. That's a check mark for me. Another geographic landmark Yay! Then there is the White House, the home of the President, First Lady, and family. President Donald J. Trump and his wife Melania are the residents and are busy making upgrades, updates, and much-needed maintenance to this home. The White House was built between 1792 and 1800. James Hoban was the original architect. I had never heard of Hoban, but we found this at the White House Visitor Center. It was a desk made of mahogany from wood that was left over from the original White House. It's James Hoban's desk. The original White House was burned in 1814 during the War of 1812 and later rebuilt. Many of us learned the song about Old Hickory in 1814, a battle in the War of 1812. To enter the White House, you will need to go through an elected official such as your U.S. congressman. Unless you plan well ahead and get all the connections and clearances, you will not be getting inside. You will have to settle as we did with getting to the guarded fence line on either side and going to the White House Visitor Center to the east at East Street Northwest and 15th Street Northwest. The south lawn of the White House is used for Marine One landings and major public events. It offers a rare glimpse into the more private side of the presidency. There is a strong security presence at the National Mall and especially surrounding the White House. The White House fence posts are topped by urn-like finials. The earliest existing fence sections are located along Pennsylvania Avenue and date from circa 1818. I caught some photos of the fencing, but not sure if I caught any of this style. Tell me in the comments if I did. The parklands around the White House, known as President's Park, is the oldest federal reservation in the United States, and its landscape reflects design input from Pierre Lafont, Andrew Jackson Downing, and the Olmsted brothers. I have discussed landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted in other videos. L'Enfant deserves a video of his own. From the main rail station which hails his name to his grave at the highest point at Arlington National Cemetery, overlooking the city he designed. I dare say little is known about this D.C. icon. In 1791, Pierre Charles L'Enfant designed a new capital city along the Potomac River. As the capital slowly grew during the 19th century, a series of proposals refined L'Enfant's original design while retaining his vision of the city as a symbol of governmental power. As we walked eastward toward 15th Street, we found the massive Department of Treasury building that is placed basically blocking the eastern side of the White House. Completed in 1869, this is the third oldest building in Washington. It once stored gold and printed early currency during the Civil War. A statue of William Tecumseh Sherman is front and center on the grounds. The General William Tecumseh Sherman Monument is an equestrian statue of American Civil War Major General William Tecumseh Sherman. It is located in what is called Sherman Plaza, which is part of President's Park. The selection of an artist in 1896 to design the monument was highly controversial. The Sherman statue was unveiled in 1903. Oh look, a quick view of the U.S. Capitol straight down Pennsylvania Avenue. The Pennsylvania Avenue National Historic Site binds this famous section of the avenue, which extends from the White House to the U.S. Capitol. We walked up a block or so on the west side of 15th Street, then crossed over to drop down to get to the White House Visitor Center. A path can only go so straight when trying to see everything. A little across the street, backtracking was in order at this point. We saw plenty on the way just in these few blocks. This is also part of the path of the Civil War to Civil Rights Downtown Heritage Trail. As we walked, I was making mental notes of things for our next trip to this epicenter of history. This sign indicates the inaugural parades from Jefferson to Reagan. How cool is that? See the old Ebbett Grill in the background? That's where we will be having dinner tomorrow evening. There's so much signage. Your brain will be totally overloaded if you read everything. Well, at least mine was. Walking on the sidewalk, we saw these beautiful medallion-style markers. It is the Extra Mile Points of Light Volunteer Pathway. I learned that this is a newer installation celebrating volunteerism and honoring individuals who devoted lives to public service and volunteering. Honorees include Edgar Allen, the founder of Easter Seals, and Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary International. This unique path honors 34 Americans whose lives of service helped shape the nation. The Extra Mile Points of Light Volunteer Pathway is along the Hotel Washington sidewalk entrance. It's a mile-long pathway of bronze medallions on 15th Street. The architectural masterpiece known simply as the Hotel Washington is a longtime D.C. institution. This independent hotel has hosted presidents, celebrities, and journalists since April of 1918. When world leaders and staff visit the president, they will stay in this nearby historic hotel. There is an observation deck bar. As we continued south to the White House Visitor Center, we found this war memorial and statue. History alert, I'm serious. This place is Overload City. The National World War I Memorial is a planned memorial commemorating the service rendered by members of the United States Armed Forces in World War I. It is located at 14th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. The park, which has existed since 1981, also contains the John J. Pershing General of the Army's commemorative work. Dedicated in 2021, the World War I Memorial and John Pershing statue pays tribute to 4.7 million Americans who served in World War I. General Pershing commanded the American Expeditionary Forces in Europe. One could spend almost an hour reading the absolutely beautifully designed maps and information carved in stone at this mindful memorial. Not only did many Americans serve in World War I, but many soldiers never returned to their families. Another note, we only saw a few homeless people during our 4 days in the city. 2 on the streets right here and 2 on the rail on subsequent days. I've already given you a sneak peek of incredible items we found in the White House Visitor Center. But now we have reached the Visitor Center and it's time to talk about it in more detail. Its hours are 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is found on the first floor of the Herbert C. Hoover Building. This National Park-operated Visitor Center provides exhibits on the architecture, artifacts, ceremonies, presidents' lives, and has restrooms and a gift shop. You will need to pass through security screening to enter the premises. After going through screening, we saw the sign that read that the gift shop was closed for the day. Do we see a pattern forming here? Another place that we will have to return to on another day, but I do want to show you around. First things first, I had to get the park passport stamps. The National Park Service staff was welcoming and friendly. Architect alert, at the counter, you can rub a piece of the exterior from the south side of the White House that literally fell off in 1981. They claim there are burn marks from when the White House burned 2 centuries ago. I just wanted to show you some of the highlights and tell you a few of the many things I learned in this museum. For example, President Franklin Roosevelt expanded the West Wing significantly and moved the Oval Office to its present location next to the Rose Garden. Roosevelt's desk is on display here and is the place where he addressed and informed the nation about the daunting problems of the Great Depression and World War II. I thought this quote was humorous. You have no idea how depressing and fatiguing it is to live in the same house where you work. President Chester A. Arthur, 1881 to 1885. Hey, Prez, I live and work in the same place. The original White House flagpole finial is placed in a prominent spot in this museum. The original crimson gilded beechwood armchair was ordered for the Oval Room by James Monroe in 1818, with a whole flock of other pieces of furniture. I found it super eye-catching, maybe because I like red. The museum is filled with charming stories of the families that have called the White House home while serving in our land's highest office. It was with honor and privilege that I saw these historic items, and I am so thankful that they are being preserved and on display for us to see. Even the part about some of these leaders' favorite foods was fun. We all know about Reagan and his jelly beans. We have visited the Jelly Belly factory in California. That was a fun tour. The kitchen items on display personalized the presidents and the first ladies in a very special way to me. Many of the artifacts are simply exquisite, and some are simply practical, and some are like, wow, I never considered that. Here is a presidential seal used by Abraham Lincoln. And this is a letter opener used by William McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt. And this typewriter was used by President Woodrow Wilson. We bought the annual White House Christmas ornament, but you'll have to learn how we got it on my Day 4 video because remember, the gift shop is closed. We had to get moving, and as we headed to Lafayette Park and St. John's Church, we passed these signs and places. The oldest savings institution in the city, the American Bar Association, the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, the Dolly Madison House. She lived there after her husband, James Madison, died. I do want to say that the markers strategically placed are very helpful for navigating the city. All too often, it can be difficult taking pictures, enjoying what you're seeing, and figuring out where you are and which direction to go, all without tripping or running into someone. At Lafayette Park, we first saw the Thaddeus Kosciuszko National Memorial. In 1776, Kosciuszko moved from his home country of Poland to North America, where he took part in the American Revolutionary War. As as a colonel in the Continental Army. An accomplished military architect, he designed and oversaw the construction of state-of-the-art fortifications, including those at West Point, New York. In 1783, in recognition of his services, the Continental Congress promoted him to brigadier general. Revolutionary aficionados will know all about this war hero. It was at this point we ended up making what would turn out to be a poor decision, but in the long run, a workaround ended up making it all the nicer. We decided to cross the street to go inside St. John's Church instead of plunging into Lafayette Park. The beautiful St. John's Church is widely known as the Church of the President. Built in 1816, this yellow Episcopal church has hosted nearly every U.S. president since James Madison. The public is welcome to go inside, but no photography is allowed. As we respectfully entered the sanctuary, a service was wrapping up, so we quickly sat in a pew. At our feet were upholstered footstools. I saw them under most of the front pews. They had the names of all the presidents embroidered on them. I really wish I could have taken a picture for you. Historian alert: there are several markers on the front of the church building, including one identifying the structure as a registered National Historic Landmark. Now let's cross the street to Lafayette Park to view the north side of the White House. Known for its role in protest and political movements, this park has been a stage for, quote, democracy, just steps from the Oval Office. Lafayette Square has had many roles over the years as a racetrack, a residential area, even a slave market, and now is a famed site for protest and public expression. Signage along the sidewalk describes and explains the construction of the White House. President George Washington worked with French engineer Pierre Lafont to select the sites for the federal buildings, including the White House and the U.S. Capitol. As we entered the park, Secret Service officers were announcing very strongly for everyone to leave the park immediately, that the park was closed. When special guests and government entourages enter or leave the White House, the park is cleared for safety. Safety note: we saw a strong police presence everywhere from a variety of jurisdictions. This certainly was a major factor in our enjoying this beautiful city. Okay, now we had another place to redo and catch at another time. This is starting to become a habit. I didn't plan for this, but workarounds are my specialty. Let me suggest that you add at least one day to your plans to visit Washington, D.C. to allow for these kinds of unexpected closures. I was able to capture this great photo of one of my favorites, Old Hickory, before we got completely out of the park. We had almost made it to the fence on the north side of the White House. I also saw this Boy Scout honorary marker. Trying to get what I can. This guy warned us and everyone within earshot that the Secret Service wasn't kidding. We had better get out of the park. Moving on, I found the famous Decatur House just to the west of Lafayette Park, one of the oldest homes in D.C. This house once belonged to naval hero Stephen Decatur and is one of the few surviving urban slave quarters. When President John F. Kennedy took office in 1961, the historic residences surrounding Lafayette Square were facing near certain demolition for new office buildings. It was through the vision and dedicated efforts of First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy that the historic character of Lafayette Square was preserved, while allowing for the compatible new construction. The view of the President's neighborhood from Decatur House is dedicated to her memory. This one was interesting. This house, built in 1819, was the home of Commodore Stephen Decatur, who died here March 22nd, 1820, from wounds received in a duel with Commodore Barron. Among other distinguished men who lived here were Henry Clay, Martin Van Buren, Edward Livingston, George M. Dallas, Edward F. Beale, and Truxton Beale. I haven't heard of all of those, but I definitely know who Henry Clay and Martin Van Buren are. As we continued south along 17th Street Northwest on our way to the National Mall proper, we saw these Texas-sized cowboy boots in front of the Renwick Gallery. This is a branch of the Smithsonian American Art Museum that celebrates craft and design in a stunning 19th century building. No time to go inside. This isn't on my to-do list. The Blair House is down this way, but we couldn't get to it. The street is almost completely blocked off because it leads to the west side of the White House. Oh well. The next place we passed was the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. This well-known structure once housed the Departments of War, Navy, and State. Today, it's part of the White House campus. We now have a Department of War again, remember? This Victorian giant is an architect alert. I'm not sure what this is all about. Empty ladies' dress shoes and a busted bag of I'm not sure what. Returning to the western side of the ellipse, we've spotted the beautiful 1st Division Memorial located in President's Park. The monument commemorates those who died while serving in the 1st Infantry Division of the U.S. Army of World War I and subsequent wars. So many buildings, so little time. We have to stay the course. We were starved. We were on the west side of the President's Park in the ellipse, and there were a number of food trucks. We decided on spicy Polish dogs loaded with relish and onions with really good French fries and bottled water. We found a park bench and gobbled down lunch. We were aiming for the World War II memorial next. But of course, there were things all around that grabbed my attention. We were making good time, but all this fast walking and wearing not broken in flip-flops was becoming a more evident problem. At the northeast corner of 17th Street Northwest and Constitution Avenue was one of the two bullfinch gatehouses. This is a cutie. Can you call a tiny historical building a cutie? Well, I am. Bullfinch Gatehouse, erected about 1828, under direction of Charles Bullfinch, architect of the Capitol. This gatehouse stood until 1874, with another at the west entrance to the Capitol grounds. The U.S. Capitol gatehouses and gateposts were designed around 1827. Two of them are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Are you having a good time so far? Have you refilled your coffee? Have you subscribed? Have you liked this video yet? I know it's a long one, but there's so much, and I want to share this. My day one and your day one. I did it, you can too. As I looked across Constitution Avenue, I spotted the lockkeeper's house. Not a lock like a combination lock, but a lock like for a canal. This was formerly the eastern terminal of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal, erected about 1835. This restored stone cottage was once the home to the lockkeeper, who managed boat traffic along the Washington City Canal. The lockkeeper's house has had many lives and witnessed almost all of American history. When it was built in 1837, it was a home for the lockkeeper's family, but that was one of its shortest lives. Over the next 175 years, it served as a comfort station. That means public restroom, a holding cell, a police station, and a tool shed. Today, it is a visitor experience, welcoming you to the National Mall. The door was locked on the lockkeeper's house, and the sign read, "Open Thursday through Sunday." This was Monday. You've got to be kidding me. I made a mental note to return on Thursday, my catch-up day. But you won't believe the timing. Wait until you see the Day 4 video. I think you're going to crack up. Next, the Tempo buildings. I was drawn down the path to the sign talking about Tempo buildings. What was a Tempo building? Temporary World War II era government offices that became semi-permanent due to growing federal needs. This was something I had never heard of. Let me know in the comments if you ever knew about these temporary buildings ordered by President Franklin Roosevelt. This is kind of a wackadoodle to me. Instead of a peaceful pond, rows of office buildings once squatted on the land in front of you. Franklin Roosevelt ordered the temporary or the Tempo buildings constructed in 1917 when he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He meant for them to stand for 15 years, but instead they outlasted his presidency. The Tempos that stood here came down in 1970, but by then there were dozens of others. One Tempo still stands on 14th Street near the Tidal Basin. I'm glad they're gone. Now, that's the way to Constitution Gardens and restrooms. But not yet. Let's get to the World War II Memorial. This stunning memorial was so much larger than I expected. Located at the east end of the reflecting pool lies the World War II Memorial, honoring millions who served during World War II, the home front support, and 400,000 Americans' ultimate sacrifice. The memorial features 56 granite pillars surrounding a pool. Brass bas-relief panels tell the story of America's experience in the war, and Atlantic and Pacific arches climb toward the sky. A wall of stars reminds visitors of the price Americans paid to win the war. Totally magnificent and dramatic. The price of freedom. The Freedom Wall holds 4,048 gold stars. Each gold star represents 100 American service personnel who died or remained missing in the war. Isn't this simply compelling? This is a perfect spot to get breathtaking views and photos of the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. This is one of my I can't breathe moments. The depth of the World War II Memorial and standing here in the center of the National Mall with these iconic monuments flanking me was incredible. The weather was perfect also, I must note. But now, my feet were cut by my new flip-flop straps and really screaming. I didn't have a backup plan except to go barefoot. I did sit on the steps and place my feet in the cool water to get a little relief. Time to move on. There was so much more to see today. The Vietnam Memorial. the Lincoln Memorial, and the Jefferson Memorial, with lots of phenomenal impressions I want to share with you. A Prayer for the Nation. This lesser-known site offers a moment of quiet reflection within the busy National Mall. In Constitution Garden, you will find an artificial lake that hosts a memorial island with stones bearing the names and signatures of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. A fun fact, the 50 acres of the park were originally beneath the Potomac River. I was looking forward to this one because it was on a tiny island in the pond. Memorial to the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Each signer is honored with an engraved granite stone, grouped by state. The 56 Signers Memorial honors those who signed the Declaration of Independence and their commitment to founding principles. The Constitution Gardens is a tranquil spot amid the monuments. These gardens were created in 1976 to celebrate America's bicentennial. Constitution Gardens was part of a movement to add more green, contemplative space rather than just monumental structures. We did take the crosswalk back across Constitution Avenue to reach the Albert Einstein Memorial. This larger-than-life bronze statue honors Einstein's legacy. The statue is in the yard of the National Academy of Sciences. The variety of architecture in the city doesn't really flow very well, in my opinion. The sterile government buildings positioned by more neoclassical structures alongside some modern contemporary structures is what you will encounter block after block. Next is the heart-wrenching Vietnam Veterans Memorial, clustered with the Women's Memorial and the 3 Servicemen statue. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial was unveiled in 1982. Maya Lin designed this black granite wall. The long wall is inscribed with more than 58,000 names of the U.S. servicemen who died or went missing during the Vietnam War, or Vietnam conflict as some call it. There is a ledger of names if you would like to find the location of the name of a friend or loved one etched on the wall. If you knew anyone that was forever changed by this war, this place should be on your bucket list. Maya Lin designed a simple yet elegant and powerful memorial. Close by, you'll find the Vietnam Women's Memorial, honoring the women who served many different roles in the Vietnam War, and Frederick Hart's statue of the 3 servicemen, honoring those who fought and returned from the war. The Vietnam Women's Memorial was dedicated in 1993 and honors the nearly 11,000 women, especially nurses, who served during the Vietnam War, spotlighting their often overlooked contributions. The 3 servicemen statue is a realistic bronze trio standing facing the Vietnam Memorial Wall, representing unity among U.S. troops, and it was placed there in 1984. The reflecting pool offers a dramatic view, especially of the Washington Monument in the background, and serves as a visual and symbolic axis between the major memorials. The reflecting pool stretches over 2,000 feet. This iconic pool mirrors the Lincoln and Washington monuments and has been the backdrop to countless historic events. Now, one of the most familiar monuments in all of Washington, D.C., the Lincoln Memorial. It is open 24 hours a day and is found on the west side of the mall on the Potomac River. The Lincoln Memorial looks out on the iconic reflecting pool. It is a tribute to America's 16th president. The I Have a Dream marker was placed in 2003 on the 40th anniversary of MLK's speech, marking the approximate spot where Dr. King delivered his iconic address. Inspired by the Parthenon, this 1922 memorial houses a 19-foot tall statue of Abraham Lincoln and the inscriptions of 2 two of his most famous speeches. After spending a few moments inside the memorial, we walked down the ramp instead of the stairs. You can toss a coin if you like. We did. Great views and this interesting sign are along this ramp. Creator's note: this ramp, although necessary, really needs to be redone and made aesthetically more pleasing to better honor this iconic architectural masterpiece. Have you ever wondered how they got that statue inside the temple? In 28 pieces. I found what I read on this sign alarming. Lionized as a man who freed the slaves and reunited the nation, Abraham Lincoln was a complex individual. From a young age, he lived with mental illness and questioned the quality of his education. Henry Bacon and Daniel Chester French aimed to capture this nuance in the statue, to make Lincoln prominent in the chamber. Bacon and French nearly doubled the size of the statue during construction. I think they needed to double it again. Their weary and tired, but kind and resolute image of Lincoln reminds us of the man behind the legacy. How did you feel when I read this to you? And did you know it was in 28 pieces? Please leave a comment below. A new Lincoln Memorial Visitor Center and Museum is to be unveiled in time for the 250th anniversary of the birth of America in 2026. Pro tip: we went to the temporary gift shop to get the passport stamp. We are heading toward the Tidal Basin with a few more great stops. As a follower of my channel, you know I prefer wearing flip-flops. This was a big mistake. In retrospect, besides choosing other footwear, I should have bought a pair of socks to protect my feet. I was so distracted by history. I had to stuff paper napkins I found at the ice cream stand counter outside of the Lincoln Memorial Visitor Center around the straps that were digging into the tops of my feet. I had to do my best to continue on. We had 2.5 more miles of this day's adventure. I had to tape my feet and wear my ugly shoes the following 3 days. I did get more passport book stamps at this location. Yay! Remember, not all stamps are at each stop. Creator's tip: in the introduction video, I mentioned that I would be sharing my little cheat tip to help gather these passport book date stamps in the best way that I found. Usually, I take my passport book with me to each visitor center, then leave it in the car while we tour the park. In the case of the National Mall, I wanted to carry as little as possible with me. I will discuss this factor of visiting Washington, D.C. in greater detail in day 2. Back to my idea. I took a sheet of sticker paper like for address labels. I could then stamp on the sticker side and then later cut the date stamps out and peel them as stickers to place in my passport books. I think I said stickers a whole lot right then. Did you get what I was trying to say? I collected over a dozen passport date stamps, and this made it much simpler than wagging around 3 passport books. What was next was the Korean War Veterans Memorial. It is so captivating. Walk the path along 19 stainless steel statues that appear as a patrol squad moving through rugged terrain. This memorial honors the 5.8 million Americans who served during the Korean War. On June 25, 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. The United States, under United Nations Command, rushed to defend South Korea. In 1953, an armistice established a demilitarized zone, known as the DMZ, near the 38th parallel. Today, South Korea remains an independent, democratic nation. The granite wall along this path contains over 2,400 images, actual faces of those who served. They represent the medics, chaplains, engineers, pilots, and other personnel who supported the troops. Artists removed identifying information and shadowed the images with Eastern light before sandblasting them into the granite. The mural looks like Korea's mountains when viewed from afar. We knew that war through our feet. We walked every inch of that country, an unnamed Korean War veteran. Dedicated in 1995, it honors those who served in the Korean War between 1950 and 1953. When reflected in the adjacent wall, the 19 stainless steel statues representing soldiers on patrol appear to be a squad of 38, a symbolic reference to the 38th parallel. This is truly an amazing memorial. In recent years, a granite wall was added listing names of the U.S. and South Korean members who died. At the end of the war, 1.5 million American veterans returned to a peacetime world in a country long reluctant to view the Korean War as something to memorialize. This memorial honors those who worked and fought under the trying circumstances of the Korean War and those who gave their lives for the cause of freedom. Let's turn to a lighter note for a bit. The U.S. Park Police horse stables are home to the horses of the police that patrol the National Mall and support crowd safety during events. Often overlooked, but vital to park operations. You can see police riding horseback through the park. We will see these police in action on day 4. This location was also closed and has limited hours. I was starting to get used to this, but if all told, I was ready to trudge on. Across the path and center stage named for President Kennedy, the JFK hockey field is used by local leagues and as an overflow for big events on the mall. We were needing to turn south to reach the path around the Tidal Basin, but before crossing Independence Avenue, we looked around and read the markings on the District of Columbia War Memorial. This peaceful-looking dome honors Washington, D.C. residents who served and died in World War I. This entire place is a reminder of the struggles this nation has undergone even prior to its founding. The courage and the price paid for by faceless millions are honored in this, our nation's capital. It's not a vacation, it's a lesson in courage. At the crosswalk, we entered West Potomac Park to the impressive MLK Memorial. The Tidal Basin, historic cherry trees, the FDR Memorial, and the Jefferson Memorial are our final planned stops. The day was wearing on and the clouds were getting thicker, but so much more history was to be absorbed. I think many people don't venture into this area of the National Mall, known as the Tidal Basin. A quieter part of the National Mall, this area is popular for picnics, kite flying, and walking near the water. There is a passport stamp for this park. Along the northern edge of the Tidal Basin, you will find the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, the first memorial on the National Mall to honor an African American. The memorial honors the legacy of Dr. King in the struggle for freedom, equality, and justice, featuring a striking likeness of Dr. King carved in a stone of hope opposite a mountain of despair. The memorial references Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech and symbolizes a victory born from disappointment. The memorial was opened in 2011. The Tidal Basin Path is a scenic, winding loop that connects several major memorials, perfect for walking or biking with reflective views across the water. Most of the traffic trends onto the western side of the basin to see the significant memorials, but if you have the time, walk the entire loop trail. Before advancing along the west side of the Tidal Basin, we walked east to find the historic cherry trees on the northern side of the Tidal Basin. The Japanese lantern at the cherry trees is a notable feature of this area. The historical cherry trees have become iconic springtime symbols of friendship between the United States and Japan. I think we spotted the original 2 trees from the 1912 shipment. Did you know that this was the second shipment of cherry trees from Japan? When you visit D.C., learn why, and you'll also learn that these trees are known for their blooms, not their fruit. Tracking back by the MLK Memorial, we followed the path to the large Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial, which spans 7.5 acres along the Tidal Basin. Even though the weather was getting gloomy, we could still see the pinnacle of the National Mall piercing into the sky. I'm speaking of the Washington Monument. The memorial features sculptures of FDR, Eleanor Roosevelt, and even the Roosevelt's dog, Fala. The 4 rooms and the 4 terms highlight the challenges of the Great Depression and World War II. Informational signage and incredible statues told a different aspect of Roosevelt's life and his 4 terms as president. I'll stop the chatter and let you see this well-thought-out design memorial to our longest-serving president. I encourage visitors to go inside the visitor center there and gift shop to learn a little more about President Roosevelt, see artifacts like his wheelchair, and of course to buy a postcard. Remember, a postcard is your cheapest souvenir and a great way to keep the memory alive of your trip to any special place. Be sure to get all your National Park Passport book stamps at any location, whether a visitor center or gift shop, that you can, because not every location has every stamp. I learned this the hard way. I chased down that World War II memorial stamp. It was crazy. If you have ever wondered about President Roosevelt's bout with polio and his beloved Campobello Island, may I suggest you watch my video when we recently visited New Brunswick, Canada. The link is in the description below. We found another marker that we really wanted to see, so we had to kind of make a sidestep and head back north to see the air-mail marker. The first air-mail marker denotes where the first airplane mail route began, connecting Washington to New York, a nod to aviation's early role in connecting the country. The marker site is near where the first scheduled airmail route launched from D.C., symbolizing the dawn of air-based communication. Back on track between the Potomac River and the Tidal Basin, we found the George Mason Memorial. The funniest thing happened as we approached this memorial. I was saying to our son that I forgot exactly what role Mason played in this nation's founding, when at the next moment, he read the sign at the George Mason Memorial, headlined by the statement, "Forgotten Founder." We busted out laughing. Mason advocated for a Bill of Rights and refused to sign the Constitution without one. This is a very pretty memorial and rarely visited. We have visited his home, Gunston Hall, located just south of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. Now, as the day was drawing to a close, we were pleasantly surprised to see the Jefferson Memorial. And what was even better is it wasn't very crowded, unlike the Lincoln Memorial, which was crawling with tourists. The Jefferson Memorial is in a more distant location from the main section of the National Mall. The Thomas Jefferson Memorial honors President Jefferson's contributions. He's the one that charged Lewis and Clark. He's the one commanding America's manifest destiny, and so much more. Jefferson fans will want to go to Monticello in Charlottesville, Virginia, to see his home, gardens, and grave. But back to this. Construction on this magnificent, beautiful memorial began in 1939 and was completed in 1943. This neoclassical dome honors the third U.S. president and author of the Declaration of Independence. Its design echoes Roman classical architecture inside are inscriptions from his writings. We see the Declaration of Independence and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. The presence of the National Guard was definitely giving a positive feel to being there and other places across the city. After walking around the imposing statue of President Jefferson, we went to the visitor center underneath the memorial. All of this was recently completed in 2024. This is a great restroom stop. Finding restrooms isn't too difficult, but you will often find that when you need one, they are too far away. I will be mentioning where we found them throughout these videos. The National Mall park maps placed in various locations indicate the locations of restrooms also. We walked east on the Tidal Basin Loop Trail to then cross the highway, go under an overpass, and then we blocked up to 14th Street Southwest to head east along D Street Southwest to 12th Street Southwest to the Department of Homeland Security building parking garage. Probably a safe place to park. To enter the underground parking to get to our car, we had to again go through security screening. Just a reminder, take only things that are absolutely necessary on expeditions such as these. Step into day 2 of our epic walking tour of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. I'm taking you into the beautiful inner sanctums of our nation's founding, along with leading you to some secret places found in plain sight. As we start, let me ask you this question. What do you imagine while watching the news or scrolling your news feed? What reference point is in the corner of your mind? Is it a flashing image from a textbook or backdrop on a news program? An X-post, an Instagram or Facebook reel? What if you could put more imagery and feeling to these places to fill in the gaps? I'm here to help. Hold on to your hats for this phenomenal trip to the National Mall. Welcome to Day 2. Day 2 was our hit the ground running walking tour to the eastern end of the National Mall in the morning, and then a complex set of excursions to rewarding sites poised in the central section of the National Mall. We even made good on a couple of Day 1 workarounds and comically created the need for a couple more. The National Mall is absolutely one of the most iconic and picturesque plazas in the nation. It's all fun, exciting, and thrilling when on educational and meaningful adventures like this one huge field trip to our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Here's a basic list of where I will be taking you today. The U.S. Capitol grounds, the Library of Congress, oh my, I can't breathe, the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum, the National Archives, oh my, I can't breathe at all, the observation deck of the old post office tower, a pop into the National Museum of American History, the observation deck of the Washington Monument, a wet but checked off workaround, the old Ebbett Grill, and Lafayette Park, which means another satisfied workaround, seeing the northern aspect of the White House. Day 2 is another full day of fast walking, experiencing historical and contemplative sites on this more structured day, with timed entries and reservations. My travel hack, the metro train to L'Enfant Plaza Station, will be our chosen way to enter our nation's capital. It's a fresh day, and we started at the terminus of the Green Line train at the Branch Avenue station near Joint Base Andrews. With my feet taped with kinesio tape and my Skechers, I was better prepared for more fast walking and even more hours on the ground than Day 1. There is a massive parking lot at Branch Avenue Station, making it the perfect station for us. Trains from every direction from the surrounding region feed into the center of Washington, D.C., launching you into the heart of our capital city. The friendly Metro staff helped us to get acquainted with the process of buying and loading the required Smart Trip Pass to go through the turnstiles to reach the trains. App folks, download the app. I've always found the employees at public transportation facilities and on the phone helpful and kind. However, I have found the online information to be incomplete or already expecting you to know too much. In addition, most commuters are willing to help you, the obvious tourist. The train was a great choice since we were parked at a friend's home located in Maryland, an hour or so south of D.C. Scheduled trains left for D.C. every 7 to 8 minutes. Perfect. If we miss one just by a bit, another one will be there soon. In around 20 minutes, we were at the main metro station at L'Enfant Plaza subway station that is fixed in the heart of the city. We were ready to meet the challenges and expectations of the day. This was an efficient use of the morning commute and the best way to avoid the roadway traffic jams. I love riding trains. It's so exciting. For you compass-oriented travelers like me, all street numbers, letters, and direction identifiers are referenced from the U.S. Capitol. We had timed tickets for 10 a.m. at the Library of Congress, noon timed tickets for the National Air and Space Museum, 2 p.m. timed entry tickets for the National Archives, and dinner reservations at Old Ebbett Grill at 5 p.m. We would be riding the train back to Branch Avenue Station later in the evening. How late depended on our level of exhaustion and the weather. It was 8:30, so we had a while to get some sights in as we walked east toward the Library of Congress. Our son headed the opposite direction to reach the ticket booth at the Washington Monument Lodge before 8:45 to attempt to get same-day tickets to the observation deck. We hoped to get tickets for around 4, just before dinner. Do you think he was successful? I think I've already spilled the beans. We strolled around the new Eisenhower Memorial, which was very well done. There was a small visitor center and I wanted to get the date stamp, but they didn't open until 10. You will find that many of the sites do not open until 10. This sort of surprised me. I'm not going to worry about getting the stamp here. Hopefully I can get it at another location. As you saw, this is possible in my Day 1 video. I treasure my national park passport books and date stamps. They are a powerful collection of memories over the decades. I hope you are encouraged to get a passport book of your own. This memorial honors our general and president and the man responsible for establishing the interstate highway system in this nation. The wide memorial is in front of the Department of Education building. I'm thinking being at the Department of Transportation or the Eisenhower Executive Office building would have been more appropriate. What do you think? And are you a subscriber? I think you have to be a subscriber to leave me a comment, and I enjoy the feedback. There are bright, shiny, clean restrooms at the rear of this building. This is a good time to tell you that the trains do not have restroom facilities, nor do the train stations. Plan ahead for this possible inconvenience. We then passed a number of interesting sites at the intersection of 3rd Street Southwest and Independence Avenue, including the National Museum of the American Indian, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the Hubert H. Humphrey Building, and the U.S. Botanical Gardens. The exterior gardens were undergoing a giant renovation project, and we could not enter because they were closed. This will need to be a stop on a different trip altogether. No work around here. The building would be open at 10, but we had other pressing places to be. Plus, we have been to similar historic gardens in Florida, Ohio, and Missouri. Maybe another time. We will have to see. Our son was calling. He announced success in getting timed entry tickets for 4 o'clock. Yippee! He was hoofing it across the National Mall to meet up with us at the General Ulysses S. Grant Memorial, found just west of the Capitol. He could have caught the train at the Smithsonian station and gotten off at Federal Center Southwest, but he can walk really fast. Orange arrows on the transit maps indicate entrances and exits to the stations. Being over 2 miles long, the National Mall is a massive park to traverse on foot. We headed north on 3rd Street and beat him there. After walking alongside the Capitol reflecting pool, we saw a flock of people and camera crews interviewing people. We didn't recognize any of them, do you? The Ulysses S. Grant Memorial is a presidential memorial honoring American Civil War General and 18th President of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant. It sits at the base of Capitol Hill. Its central sculpture of Grant on horseback faces west, overlooking the Capitol reflecting pool and facing toward the Lincoln Memorial, which honors Grant's wartime president, Abraham Lincoln. We will be back here on day 4 for more splendid photographs of the statue and more details about it. With still 25 minutes to spare, let's see what we can accomplish. The 3 of us crossed the street to the west side of the Capitol grounds. This is a beautiful side of the Capitol, and looking west, you can admire the length of the National Mall. I do want to make a strong note here. Your head will literally be on a swivel to see all the monuments, memorials, and locations of famous governmental departments that you have heard about all your life. I heard there are over 65 memorials and monuments at the National Mall. Trekking northwestwardly, we found the Summer House. How lovely. Completed in 1881, the Summer House is a splendid garden ensconced by a hexagonal red brick structure. The ornate oasis was a place where travelers could take a breather and refresh themselves with water in an era when people walked long distances just to run their weekly errands. I am taking you to gobs of places in this video, just as you experienced in my day 1 video. A person could probably spend a lifetime consuming all the information and investigating every nook and cranny and locations of special occurrences in this magnificent American city. Next, we coursed across Constitution Avenue to the Robert A. Taft Memorial and Carillon. Carillons are awesome. Do you know what a carillon is? If you want to know more about these fascinating musical structures, watch my video on the Bach Tower located near Orlando, Florida. I'll put the link in the description below. Above the statue is inscribed, "This memorial to Robert A. Taft, presented by the people to the Congress of the United States, stands as a tribute to the honesty, indomitable courage, and the high principles of free government symbolized by his life." And then I found out about the carillon, that it was originally played every 4th of July, but the bells are currently turned off due to deterioration. Well, that's a bummer. Passing across the front of the masked Supreme Court along 1st Avenue Northeast, we were looking around to find out where to enter the Library of Congress, as it was already 9:45. Boy, I'm glad I'm not wearing those flip-flops today. We spotted a line forming at the lower level on the west side of the building. That's the side that faces the Capitol. Architect alert. Let me rephrase that. Architect overload alert. This Italian Renaissance-style structure opened in 1897, nearly a century after the library's founding. During the 20th century, several presidents have decreed more and more sacred documents become a part of the collection, and at this time, the Library of Congress occupies 3 buildings. Our visit is to the original 1897 Jefferson Building. Now, a note before you go, insert. Free timed entry tickets are required to enter the library's Thomas Jefferson Building. Tickets are available 30 days in advance. Free same-day tickets will be made available online each day at 9 a.m. Just be sure to know before you go. And something of major importance is that it is closed on Mondays and Sundays. Check the hours before you go. We stood in line for about 15 minutes, and I had printed out the QR codes for our 3 entry passes. They recommend taking a screenshot or printing out the passes. As with all buildings we would be entering during these 4 days, excluding the restaurant, we would pass through security screening. Some places places didn't care if we had bottles of water, and some did. And by the way, this is also a potty stop. When researching for our visit to the Library of Congress, I saw that not only would we see the Jefferson Library, but there were 5-minute walkthroughs of the reading room. Here's the know before you go part. The Library of Congress welcomes visitors to join short 5-minute walkthroughs around the center desk of the grand main reading room, usually reserved for credentialed researchers. This special access offers visitors a glimpse inside of Washington's most beautiful spaces. Now, the main reading room is available to view on the first floor of the Thomas Jefferson Building, Tuesday through Friday, only at certain times during the day and on Thursday evenings. Be sure to check the website for the exact times to coordinate with your time tickets. I'm going to have to keep my voice down. We are in a library, after all. As soon as we got to the information desk, I asked about the procedure for getting in the reading room, as I didn't want to miss out on this amazing opportunity. And they told me just get in line at 10:30. So that's what we did. We had 30 minutes. Let's see what we can do. We climbed the gorgeous stairway to reach President Jefferson's library. As you pass into this area, there are cases and displays filled with some of the most historical documents of this nation. I can only tell you this is so powerful and exceedingly overwhelming. The Library of Congress is housed in 3 buildings on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and this is the research library for the U.S. Congress and is considered the National Library of the United States. It is also the largest library in the world with a collection of, get this, more than 170 million items. The story of the Library of Congress began in 1800 when President John Adams approved a congressional act that moved the national capital from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. As a part of the bill, a sum of $5,000 was earmarked for books intended for use by the U.S. Congress. In August 1814, during the War of 1812, which we learned a little bit about in Day 1, British forces burned the Capitol, destroying the still small Congressional Library. The following year, Congress purchased Jefferson's extensive personal library, including some 6,487 books for $23,950, which became the foundation of the new Library of Congress collection. We're going to see it. Hang on. Unfortunately, another fire in 1850, this time accidental, destroyed some 35,000 volumes, including almost 2/3 of Jefferson's original contribution. Just sickening, isn't it? At least to me it is. Let me show you the actual books of President Jefferson's library. I can't breathe. I have been to Jefferson's home, the bedroom where he died, and the cemetery where he was buried. But now I'm passing by this founding father's personal library. Guys, I hope you're enjoying this so far. Isn't this beyond exciting? The way the books are presented and preserved is just incredible. I know you're impressed. I wonder if President Jefferson read all of these. He didn't have YouTube, so maybe so. A history alert about the books that you are looking at in the Jefferson Library. There are 4 categories. The ones with green ribbons are books that were part of Jefferson's original library. Books that have been recently purchased to reconstitute Jefferson's library are marked with a gold ribbon. Books that are identical to books owned by Jefferson and which were located in the Library of Congress collections have no ribbon. And then there are some book boxes, and these are missing from the library. The Library of Congress is continuing to search worldwide for these missing books and will be adding them to the display as they are acquired. As we passed to other impactful displays, I was speechless. One of the most fabulous documents we saw was General George Washington's personal copy of the Declaration of Independence. I want to share with you more of the amazing documents and maps that we saw. I hope that you are grasping the emotions that ran through me as I was inches from these treasures. I am overtaken by passion simply writing this script. It was nearing the time to get into the line to enter the reading room. No bags, umbrellas, or basically anything of any size was allowed. There is open shelving at the entrance door for you to place your personal items. Yes, we were carrying umbrellas. Rain was forecasted for mid-afternoon. The Gutenberg Bible was on prominent display, also next to the line to enter the reading room. So we walked around that display as we waited for our time to enter. When Johann Gutenberg introduced printing with movable metal type to Western Europe, he revolutionized not only the book, but the very nature of communication. Gutenberg launched this revolution in 1455 in Mainz, Germany, with the printing of the Bible, St. Jerome's 4th century Latin Vulgate Bible. Text, once scarce and complicated to produce, was now easily created in multiples that were readily distributed. His Bible resembled a large Gothic manuscript Bible of that period. Most copies were printed on paper, but the Library of Congress copy is printed on vellum, a fine parchment made from animal skins. The library's copy is one of only several perfect vellum copies to survive. For nearly 5 centuries, this Bible was in the possession of the Benedictine order in their monasteries of St. Blasius and St. Paul in Austria, along with other 15th century books. It was purchased from Dr. Otto von Bohr by Act of Congress in 1930. Now, it was time to enter the reading room. Besides being incredibly beautiful, the reading room looked like a library you would see in a movie set in an old European building. There were lots of desks for researchers, but there were only a few people at the desk. They didn't rush us through, but we did form a line passing in a circular fashion. This elaborate place is drenched in symbolism. 12 large figures surround the main dome. These elevated statues represent the different genres of books in the library, such as art, philosophy, religion, science, and history. Each statue holds representative items of significant value. For example, history is holding a mirror to look behind, but he's also looking forward to the future. There are no adjectives that are adequate to describe this place. This building is one of a kind. How fortunate I feel to be here and to be bringing you along with me. Back upstairs, look at this view across and into the reading room from this small upper-level platform. Now, for the Collecting Memories Gallery. One could spend a long time in this memories room. These are a few things that stood out to me. Historian alert! That's sort of a crazy thing for me to say, isn't it? These items were removed from President Abraham Lincoln's pockets when he was fatally shot and moved to the Petersen house across the street from Ford's Theater. A folding pair of eyeglasses with case. A large white Irish linen handkerchief with A. Lincoln embroidered in red on the other side of the handkerchief. The handkerchief has been turned over as a conservation measure. Oh, that's good. A silk-lined leather wallet. Lincoln was carrying 9 newspaper clippings in his wallet, including reports on unrest in the Confederate Army, emancipation in Missouri, and an article on the presidency. And then an ivory and silver multi-blade pocket knife. You're gonna love days 3 and 4 when I show off the Petersen house and Ford's Theater. And there was another workaround I had to solve. Next, the original yellow ribbon from the 1979 hostage crisis. How many of you remember this? How many of you have no idea of the origin of the yellow ribbon? Have you heard tie a yellow ribbon, around the old oak tree? In 1979, Penny Langan tied a large yellow ribbon around a tree in her yard in Bethesda, Maryland. Her husband, L. Bruce Langan, acting ambassador, was one of 53 hostages held in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran by Iranian revolutionaries. The ribbon remained a public reminder of the hostages until their release in 1981, at the time when Ronald Reagan was inaugurated president. She was inspired by the popular song, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree. Today, yellow ribbons remain a symbol of remembering and supporting the troops. There was tons to see in this room. You'll have to go there yourself. But I wanted to point out these 2 items because both Lincoln's pocket contents and Penny's ribbon were just ordinary items that became historically significant and that would transcend time and generations. I think that's called history. Time is of the essence and every moment counts, especially in timed entry passes. Are you excited so far? Did you make a pot of coffee or get a cup of tea? Maybe a tall South Carolina style sweet iced tea and some buttery popcorn? We've got a lot to do before dinner. It came time to leave the library as much as I didn't want to. So much to see and so little time. We needed to get to the Smithsonian by 11:50, but since we were right there, we thought we could pop into the Supreme Court building. No time tickets are required. We walked toward a guard to see where and how to get into the Supreme Court building. The guard was clear. No food nor fluids. Not even water. Well, we had protein bars and 3 waters. So we made the decision for our son to go on in with the time we had to spare because he was flying out on Wednesday. We could wait outside because we could return on Thursday to do this workaround. While he was inside there, we crossed over to the Capitol Visitor Center to see if we could get in the gift shop. There were 2 really long lines and we didn't have time to stand in one to go inside. Our exciting surprise on day 4 overwhelmed me again. I will save all about the Capitol and the Supreme Court for the day 4 video. Be sure to turn on the notifications so that you are alerted when I post new videos. Now that he was back out of the Supreme Court building, we crossed in front of the Capitol and saw lots of vehicles from out of state. Were these the cars of Congress members and senators or staffers? I spotted this pass on the ground to get into the House of Representatives. No, I didn't use it. This thing is huge, and it is indeed beautiful. I want to see inside. I want to see the statues from each state. Will I or won't I? Day 4 will reveal what happened. Have you taken a second to subscribe and to leave me a comment? What do you think so far? Are you having fun? What's your favorite thing? We made a quick trek west on Independence Avenue Southwest, then crossed up to Jefferson Drive Southwest to the front doors of the Smithsonian Institution National Air and Space Museum. We were first in line and we popped over to the coffee stand for an iced latte and a scone. Timed entry means timed entry. It was interesting to hear people talk about how they had entry tickets for an earlier time or didn't have one at all. To enter the galleries of the National Air and Space Museum, everyone must pass through security screening. This museum did not have restrictions on food or drinks. I'm just going to show you around. This place is huge and you're going to be overwhelmed. However, tops on my list were the Wright brothers airplanes, Amelia Earhart's plane, and the actual Spirit of St. Louis. I'd seen the phony one in St. Louis. This was the real one. We spent almost an hour and a half there. Please use these videos as a source, but do your own research. Believe me, it will make your trip go smoother. You see how many workarounds I've had to deal with already, and I poured over information for hours and days before we went. It's time to get going. We need to cross the National Mall and be at the National Archives by 1:50. We had a full 20 minutes to spare, so our son recommended we pop into the National Museum of Natural History to check out a few things. 20 minutes, that's a long time. You can get a lot accomplished, or at least we could. This museum wasn't on our to-do list, but it is right here. On the upper level, in the Geology, Gems, and Minerals section, we could see the Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is 45.52 carats, and it's from India. The sign reads, "You are looking at one of the world's most famous gems, renowned for its flawless clarity, rare deep blue color, and eventful history. It is surrounded by 16 white diamonds and suspended from a platinum chain bearing 46 more diamonds." Stunning. I love rocks, gems, and minerals, and one of the most phenomenal displays of these items I have ever found was at the Petroleum Museum in Midland, Texas. That is a really interesting video, plus I take you driving through the oil fields in West Texas. I've placed the link in the description below. Back to the jewels, gems, and minerals. Aren't these they're just amazing, incredible, fabulous, about all those adjectives. We also continued through a few more galleries, and we saw this giant female squid. We had to get to the National Archives building entrance. We passed more and more famous buildings, like the Department of Justice building. We walked directly into the National Archives, and there was not a line, and no one asked to see our passes. But we certainly went through security screening. The exhibits are open from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. daily. This is an architect alert. This temple of our history will appropriately be one of the most beautiful buildings in America. An expression of the American soul. Herbert Hoover, February 20th, 1933, at the laying of the cornerstone of the National Archives building. After walking through a hallway, we did reach a line. The staff limited the number of people that went into the rotunda to see the most treasured documents of this republic, the U.S. founding documents. The National Archives is proud to display the entire Constitution of the United States for the first time ever. The Constitution was adopted in 1788, and the first 10 amendments were ratified in 1791. Today we know them as the Bill of Rights. Since then, 17 additional amendments have been ratified. Contained in the pages is a revolutionary system of Republican government ordained by the people. It is the result of the lived experiences of America's founders, who declared independence from Great Britain in 1776 in response to successive grievances against the British monarchy and Parliament. The founders were determined to forge a new path, one based on the idea that government is only legitimate when it possesses the consent of the governed. It is one of the oldest written constitutions in effect and one of the shortest in length. Some visitors might wonder, why is it so cold and dark in here? Before it came to the National Archives, the Declaration of Independence was displayed in a room where it was exposed to heat, smoke, and sunlight. Well, that doesn't seem too smart. Its faded ink is evidence of the damage that light, temperature, and humidity can do. To preserve the founding documents, the environment in the rotunda and inside the encasements is carefully controlled. The encasements, 24-karat gold plated titanium frames, are filled with non-reactive argon gas. Sensors monitor temperature and humidity and detect the presence of oxygen, which could cause deterioration. Fiber optic lighting and light reflective glass protect against fading. These high-tech chambers ensure that the opportunity to experience these precious documents will be available for generations to come. The National Archives website has recommendations for what to do with the amount of time you can invest there, whether it's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes. Once we exited the rotunda, there were more documents in the hallway area from opening the vault. This is part of the featured document exhibit in the East Rotunda Gallery. On the ground floor, the David M. Rubenstein Gallery is where you will find one of the more unbelievable documents. It is one of only 4 surviving 1297 Magna Carta originals. That's the year 1297. Can you imagine this? I found this almost unbelievable. Guys, I don't know how you're feeling about this, but I am just overwhelmed. I think this is the road trip to beat all road trips. We have just seen the original U.S. Constitution, the original Declaration of Independence, and now the Magna Carta. How can it get any better? This is just phenomenal. Pass into the Records of Rights exhibit that contains stupendous information of the history of this nation. The exhibits highlight how generations of Americans have sought to fulfill the promises of the founding documents. This was one of the most incredible places. I don't know how you could top the Library of Congress, but this came really close. I think they're twins. I think they're just incredible. You have to go to both of these places. The gift shop was hopping. I bought a new pair of sunglasses. On day 4, they would become my top shades. Our time to move on was here, and the rain had started and the wind had picked up. We tromped northwesterly on Pennsylvania Avenue, passing the J. Edgar Hoover FBI building. Pennsylvania Avenue is referred to as America's Main Street, and this section is within the Pennsylvania Avenue National Historic Site. As mist turned into a heavy sprinkle and the wind picked up, in front of us was the gorgeous old post office tower. This structure has an incredible history that includes being a famous luxury hotel. We were searching for the entrance to reach the clock tower observation deck operated by the National Park Service. Today, the old post office is leased by the General Service Administration as a luxury hotel. We found the entrance at the rear of the hotel. The tower is open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the last entry is at 4:30 p.m. 7 days a week. The 270-foot high observation deck allows visitors an awe-inspiring view of the city. After passing through a more limited security screening, you will go on through a hallway that is filled with maps and documents and photographs recording the history of Washington, D.C. from L'Enfant's vision of the nation's capital city and the locating of the territory of Columbia. A super cool item was the 1899 vault door that had been found on the 5th floor. There are tons of very amazing historical photographs. We continued down the hallway toward Voices, where we found a National Park Service ranger speaking to a group of people. They were all waiting for the elevator to reach the observation deck. I had it in the back of my mind to skip this because the main purpose to go there was to see all of D.C., and the weather was growing inconducive to that purpose. But it was what it was. This is what memories are made of, right? We caught the elevator ride with views of the atrium of the 5-star hotel. It was easier to see in person through the mesh. This elevator took us to another floor with some artifacts from the clock tower, like the original clock hands. This is where we would catch the next elevator to the open-air view observation deck. This is the 3rd tallest building in Washington, D.C. at 315 feet. Our next major stop is the Washington Monument, which is the tallest at 555 feet. Well, as I presented in day 1, it's technically 555 feet 5 1/8 inches. Take a few minutes to read the historical clock information. Let's get on to the tower access floor. The wind was whipping and a heavy mist was blowing in sideways through the open air observation deck. This is the actual clock mechanism. Amazing. Some of the windows had glass and some were open with wire screening the openings. I'm thinking a workaround is in order. Maybe we can return on Thursday. You will have to hit the notification bell so that you will know when I post day 4 to find out if we returned. The old post office tower is a federally protected site offering picturesque views of the nation's capital. The United States government constructed the postal building between 1892 and 1899. From the 270-foot observation deck, visitors are treated to a view over overlooking several of the United States' prized structures. The ranger had mentioned to us to see how a lot of the government buildings were open in the center, and the buildings were built like frames. This was because when most of them were built, there wasn't air conditioning, and this helped create circulation through the buildings. From here, you can see the Capitol, the White House, the Washington Monument, the Pentagon, the Smithsonian museums, the Supreme Court, and the Lincoln Memorial. On a clear day, visibility may exceed 12 miles. National Park Service rangers are on duty at the lobby, the 9th floor, and the observation deck to educate visitors about the building and surrounding attractions. Time to move on. As we exited, we saw everyone's favorite, the IRS building. We were aiming toward the Washington Monument because we had 4 o'clock timed entry tickets. With a few minutes to spare and on our direct path was the National Museum of American History. Our son had been to D.C. a few months back, and he knew that we would melt when we saw what was just inside this massive museum. After passing through security screening, I saw the sign referring to the Star-Spangled Banner, the inspiration of the national anthem. As we walked around the wall, we saw it, the original Star-Spangled Banner that flew at Fort McHenry when Francis Scott Key penned the words to this American heart song. No photographs are permitted, and there are employees that are posed and poised right behind you to prevent anyone from sneaking a picture. So here's one more reason you need to visit Washington, D.C. yourself. When you see it in person, you will notice a lot of the material has been torn and cut off from the flag. After the war, people wanted souvenirs. Imagine that. Maybe that's another reason that this treasure is so well protected. I appreciate that. Now, to add insult to injury, I'm filming these outtakes. I'd set my glasses and hat on the couch, and Steve came in to see what I was doing and sat right down on my new National Archives sunglasses and broke them. I'm not very happy right now. I'm having to wear these sunglasses my friend Sam gave me. Do you have any extra sunglasses? Because my National Archives sunglasses are broken. Thanks, Steve. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah. Now for the trek across the streets and uphill to the entrance of the Washington Monument. Unfortunately, the rangers made us stand outside in the rain until our timed entry. We then passed through security screening in the new facility that I mentioned in my Day 1 video. There were only a handful of us that decided to take the elevator ride to the observation deck in the upgraded elevator. I guess I can understand that, but an opportunity to ride in this historic structure can't be missed as far as I'm concerned. We found the statue of our first president and this quote, "My whole life has been dedicated to the service of my country." I believe that. Now for the elevator ride. There is so much to read while up at the observation deck level. Even though the views weren't those of most people's expectations, I found the fog and the rain to add a dimension of mystique and trial to the sights laid out in front of me. Here are the views from the 4 sides. La Enfant envisioned a statue of George Washington on a horse at this place, but instead this obelisk was placed in the pinnacle point of the city, which faces the Lincoln Memorial, the White House, the Capitol, and Jefferson Memorial. And, of course, the stupendous World War II Memorial, the MLK Memorial, the Watergate, and the old post office tower where we just were, and the Smithsonian Castle. We saw all of these from the Washington Monument. How do you like these pictures in the fog and rain? I think they're all kind of cool, don't you? Architect alert. A few factoids about this monument, which is a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark. Have you ever wondered why the Washington Monument is 2 colors? Masons used a bright white marble from a Maryland quarry in the first construction phase. Builders completed the monument in the 1880s with marble from another quarry. Wind and rain have weathered the stones differently, making the color change more dramatic over time. I had never known this until I visited. The monument has about 36,000 stones. The stones change colors at 150 feet. A very strong foundation keeps the monument upright. And the monument weighs about 81,000 tons. And now for a historian alert, one of the most famous of all of George Washington's quotes. "The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. This is from George Washington's inaugural address, April 30th, 1789. This was exceedingly interesting to me, strikingly beautiful and scary. What happens when lightning strikes the monument? In 1885, the first lightning strike cracked one of the stones. Since then, the monument's lightning protection system has been updated many times. These lightning rods, a little bent and burned, were removed and replaced in 2012. To learn more about the ticket requirements, I recommend watching my Day 1 video if you haven't yet. Also, for those of you who are not able to get a ride in the elevator, simply walking around the monument and beautiful grounds is mesmerizing. The Washington Monument is the obvious cornerstone of the Capitol. This monument stands in tribute to the military service of George Washington and the ideals of the nation he helped to create. The Washington Monument is one of the world's most iconic landmarks. How could I have missed going up in the elevator just because it was raining? No, I couldn't, so I didn't. Creator's note: I have been to George Washington's birthplace on the Potomac River in Virginia. I have been to the one and only place George Washington surrendered. He was only 22 years old, and he surrendered at Fort Necessity, found in southwest Pennsylvania. I have had the honor of walking through his beautiful home at Mount Vernon and standing in his bedroom where he drew his last breath. And I have stood outside his grave, and our son was allowed to go inside his tomb building. American history at its best. Now, let's go to dinner at Old Ebbitt Grill, just a few blocks to the north along 15th Street Northwest. If only these walls could talk. You are now standing in Washington, D.C.'s oldest saloon, the Old Ebbitt Grill. Originally founded by William E. Ebbitt in 1856, the Ebbitt House was a hotel and restaurant located on Newspaper Row, a stretch of properties occupied by the D.C. offices of the New York Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Herald, and the New York Evening Post. Though the original structure was demolished in 1972, the present location of Old Ebbitt Grill is situated within the second Empire-style hotel, also called Ebbitt House, which was erected in 1862. Many of the original heirlooms have been preserved, including the property's collection of antique beer steins and the clock perched above the door. Oh, that clock got me. The original Victorian bar, a favorite of 6 presidents, has been replicated here to exact detail. You can read more about the history at ebbitt.com. Many other famous statesmen, naval, and military heroes, too numerous to mention here, have been guests of the house. Some, though, include Ulysses S. Grant, Grover Cleveland, William McKinley, Andrew Johnson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Warren Harding. Those guys are all presidents. If you go to Washington, D.C., don't you think you ought to eat at Old Ebbitt Grill? This is what we ordered for an appetizer. Do you like oysters? And these are our meals. And these are the desserts we chose. Do they look good to you? We had not eaten anything all day except a protein bar. And my feet are soaked, by the way. I have to tell you something funny about the famous clock above the door. As we were seated, I noticed the clock above the door that showed right at 5 o'clock. I didn't realize the clock didn't work. I just thought, wow, we made it at the exact time we had reservations. When I went to the restroom a few minutes later, I saw the hands had not moved. The joke was on me. Dinner was spectacular, and it was a great way to wind down the day. We decided that due to the yucky weather, we would not stay out late, and plus we were pretty exhausted. However, upon exiting the grill, the rain had lifted and we needed to take care of a day 1 workaround. We walked north and west to return to Lafayette Park to see the beautiful White House. President Trump's new beautiful flag was waving, and this put the cherry on top of our day. Here we are at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This historian's heart was full. Based on our location, it made sense for us to walk to the Farragut West train station and catch the orange, blue, or silver line to L'Enfant Station. I mentioned I'd give a few travel hacks. Believe me, once underground, you will likely lose your sense of direction, if you have one. The train signage does not necessarily always indicate an ordinal direction because the trains go in a variety of directions. What you look for is the terminus station name of the direction you want to go. For example, we needed to get to L'Enfant, so we needed to catch the orange train labeled New Carrollton, or either the blue or silver train labeled to Largo. Signage is all over the stations. Be sure that you are on the correct side of the tracks, though. Staircases and escalators provide access to the other side of the tracks. I highly recommend getting familiar with the system so you don't get tripped up, and I promise you'll be glad that you did. Riding the train was one of the fun aspects of this visit to D.C. In each train, there is a digital or computerized screen identifying the location of the train's next stops, and each stop is announced over the speaker system. Within just a few minutes, we were at L'Enfant Plaza. This is a large station and the major hub of the system. If you get to L'Enfant, you can get anywhere. We identified the green line to Branch. The next train was arriving in 7 minutes. The wait is never very long, and 20 minutes later, we would be disembarking and walking to our car that was waiting for us at that huge parking lot where we had parked it hours and hours ago. One more travel hack: if you pay for parking with your Smart Trip, it's half price. So keep your Smart Trip loaded. It is easy to reload at the machines at any of the stations. Soaked, ugly shoes on the ground. Unclassic road trip in our nation's capital. Day 2 complete. No social media. There was the Telegraph and the Pony Express. It's April 14th, 1865. President Abraham Lincoln was brutally shot by a well-known actor while attending a play at Ford's Theater, just blocks from the White House. The assailant is a young man identified as John Wilkes Booth. He is on the run. Will President Lincoln survive? Will Booth be caught? Fast forward 98 years to November 22nd, 1963. President Kennedy has been shot in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. Will LBJ succeed this young, vibrant man before the day's end? Everyone is glued to the black and white television. Telephones and party lines are ringing off the hook as the nation is grieving once again. Fast forward 136 years from that night at Ford's Theater. Social media on the rise and everyone glued to cable news and the major networks. It's September 11th, 2001. The morning's news travels very differently from that night in D.C. in 1865. The places that memorialize these events are easily found in our nation's capital. As visitors passed by the place Lincoln was seated and the bedroom where he drew his last breath, to the eternal flame of President John F. Kennedy's grave at Arlington National Cemetery, just to the west of the Potomac, only a few miles from 10th Street Northwest and F Street Northwest, and dropping just to the south to the premises of the Pentagon, the 9/11 Memorial. How can we not reflect on these events that transformed and redirected the future of the United States of America? I consider this to be our most reflective and introspective day of them all. Day 1 encapsulated a 5-mile trek around the most well-known memorials found on the western end of the National Mall and around the Tidal Basin. Day 2 was our hit-the-ground-running walking tour to the eastern end of the National Mall in the morning, and then a complex set of excursions to rewarding sites found in the central section of the National Mall, to some of the most impressive architectural structures in America, and maybe even the world. For those of you that have followed this series so far, you know that workarounds have become a subtle theme of this incredible field trip to our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Our adventures will stray from the National Mall, crossing the Potomac River and also venturing north of Pennsylvania Avenue. Today's featured sites include the National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial, a look at Arlington National Cemetery, and then a side stop checking out the free exhibits at the Museum of the Bible, and then our primary goal of seeing inside the Ford's Theater and the Petersen's house. Will we make it to all of these sites? Will there be any necessary workarounds? How did we reach these meaningful places? All these questions will be answered here in Day 3 as you travel across America with me at this filled to the brim bucket list urban attraction. The Metro train from Branch Avenue Green Line to L'Enfant Plaza will be our chosen way to enter our nation's capital on Day 3. Noting that our son will be catching a midday flight, he will be reaching the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport via rail. This was a great option, which allowed us to continue to sites that he had seen on his visit a few months back. With my feet retaped with kinesio tape and my Skechers dried out, I was ready for Day 3. Our first planned stop was at the Pentagon. The gift shop near the Pentagon train station opened at 7 a.m., but we weren't positive we could get in. It was hard to determine the required clearance procedure for visiting this property. Would it be possible to at least get to the gift shop? We saw that the National 9/11 Pentagon Memorial was located on the opposite side of the massive, famous-shaped government building from the train station access point. We boarded a train at L'Enfant to reach the Pentagon, arriving there at 9 a.m. The line of people at the security gate to enter the Pentagon was literally right at the ground level from where we exited the train. The Pentagon guard was clear. We had to have advance clearance even to get into the gift shop. I don't understand that. But whatever, this was sort of a last-minute place to go on our to-do list anyway. We asked him about reaching the memorial, and he said to go to the end of the sidewalk and follow the signs that wrapped around the massive building. With some intrepidation, we walked the long path through construction areas, passing through the ginormous parking lot, and following the signs. There were several men chatting at the entrance of the memorial. I confirmed that we could walk around the fenced-in memorial and take pictures, to which they said, "Of course." I have to tell you, this property is a bit intimidating. I noticed some high-tech porta-potty facilities, which we were in need of. Remember, no potties in the train stations or on the trains. So go when you can, when you have the option. This is a beautiful and unique memorial. We claim this ground in remembrance of the events of September 11th, 2001, to honor the 184 people whose lives were lost, their families, and all who sacrificed that we may live in freedom. We will never forget. We will be forever grateful to the thousands of people from across the nation and around the world who contributed their time, resources, and energy to create this memorial. While there, we gazed at the Pentagon building, noticing the change in coloring where the repairs had been made. After returning to the station, our next stop was Arlington National Cemetery, basically the adjacent property. When the lights start flashing, this is your warning that a train will be speeding in. We hopped on the Blue Line. As I taught you in day 2, the Blue Line to Largo. The first stop was Arlington National Cemetery. Boy, this beats walking and driving for sure. You will need to walk a few blocks from the station exit to reach the Arlington National Cemetery Visitor Center. We caught a few photos of statues as they are absolutely everywhere. I really wanted this one of Admiral Byrd. The tales surrounding this rear admiral have always intrigued me. You will pass through security screening before reaching the displays, gift shop, restrooms, and access to the trolleys serving the cemetery. No personal cars are allowed. Because I have already presented a complete video on this sensitive, emotional, astounding place that every American should see, I am going to only present a summary and include the photos that our son took. He had not been there before, and with only minutes to spare before his flight, we agreed he would long-leg it in the mist up to the Kennedy family graves and to the tomb of the unknown soldier. I can't encourage you enough to watch my full video on Arlington National Cemetery, which includes a dynamic view of the changing of the guard. This is a life-changing place that will stir even the coldest individual. At least I hope so. And here's a travel hack. Since Paul was flying out midday, he had a carry-on that needed to be stowed away while we saw the morning sights. There are various places in big cities around the world that have lockers for this purpose. He had found one at the Cleaner of Cleaners, a few blocks from L'Enfant. That would suffice. Because of this, we had to take the train back to L'Enfant so he could get his carry-on. Plus, we planned to spend the rest of the day in the inner city area. We grabbed an iced latte with him at Casey's coffee shop across from the NASA headquarters before we parted ways. There was a group of men at the adjacent table that were speaking rather loudly about their dealings with NASA's staff. I wish I could have sat in on that conversation. In minutes, he would be boarding the plane to fly out from this epic adventure. He re-entered L'Enfant to ride the train to the airport. This seems like a lot of unnecessary back and forth, but the convenience and frequency of the trains makes it doable and the best option. Now, we were walking several blocks to reach the Museum of the Bible. This place had been highly recommended to us. We found out there were free exhibits on the first floor. The major exhibits are behind a steep paywall. For the most part, our trip has cost very little. Frankly, the only cost so far was a couple of hot dogs and a nice dinner. I did buy those great National Archives sunglasses that met an unfortunate demise, though. We really didn't have time or plans to devote to this museum in what would be a reasonable amount of time. Like everywhere in D.C., you must pass through security screening, but what we saw was amazing. The main display was the Megiddo Mosaic, which was excavated between 2004 and 2008. These types of findings are absolutely phenomenal and are incredible testaments in stone of history. Excellent signage explain the meaning, making, and reason for this huge mosaic. The northern inscription includes the name of the artist who created it. This signature is the earliest one that has been found in a mosaic in the Holy Land. The mosaic is made of tens of thousands of limestone tesserae in 10 different shades. Conservators found that every 4 by 4 inch square contains between 45 and 65 tesserae. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. Somebody please correct me in the comments. This means that the estimated total number of tesserae in the mosaic is between 230,000 and 340,000. Wow. Other objects and artifacts are beautifully displayed in this gallery. I can see how people could devote a full day to this museum. Just accessing the free exhibits on the first floor are compelling and time-consuming. Maybe when we return to D.C. another time and do those next time workarounds, this stop will be included in our itinerary, along with the United States Botanical Garden that was under renovation and the popular close-by Spy Museum. The ceiling in the foyer of this museum is gorgeous. Ancient civilizations, architecture, and archaeology is an area of study that is not in my wheelhouse, but I certainly find it interesting. We passed through the second free exhibit. The third one was not open. The second was titled The House of David, circa 840 to 800 BC. Wow. The stone preserves the first ancient reference to King David's dynasty ever discovered. The king of Aram Damascus created this inscription about 150 years after the time of David. Truly incredible. Discovered in northern Israel in 1993, the Tel Dan Stele is the earliest archaeological artifact to reference the House of David. Carved in Aramaic by a foreign king in the 9th century BC, the inscription offers independent confirmation that a dynasty bearing David's name was recognized in the ancient Near East. Its discovery has largely silenced debate about whether David was a historical figure, demonstrating that his legacy was known and acknowledged well beyond the pages of the Bible. It's time to get moving. Here's an important travel hack. We walked a few blocks west to L'Enfant Plaza. Remember, I mentioned that the orange arrows indicate the entrances, exits of the train stations? The escalators descending into the stations are sometimes hidden in plain sight. We were needing to take either the orange, blue, or silver line to Metro Center. Now, since we were headed in a northwesterly direction, we were looking for trains labeled Franconia Springfield, Vienna, or Auburn. One to Vienna was leaving in 2 minutes. I'm telling you, you just can't beat utilizing this way to get around the city. I neglected to tell you something important. You can purchase an all-day pass, which gives unlimited rides. We knew that we would be utilizing the train a lot today, so we loaded our Smart Trip that morning at Branch Avenue with a day pass. The day pass load is only good for that day. Perfect. We wouldn't have to pay attention to whether we had enough on our card as we scoured the city sites. Our son had the app and loaded the day rate on his phone. Important note, the day pass does not work toward the parking fee. You will need to load money on the pass to pay for discounted parking with your Smart Trip. Walking just a few blocks from Metro Center, we arrived at the front door of the visitor access to Ford's Theater, National Historic Site. And there, it was staring me in the face, our next workaround. I was absolutely stunned. The schedule board perched on the sidewalk made me shudder. The theater was closed for the rest of the day. The park ranger told me that rehearsals for a play were taking place and that we would need to return in the morning if we wanted to get inside the theater. About those Day 4 epic adventure workarounds, which including getting into the Supreme Court building and the U.S. Capitol, we are now adding Ford's Theater and possibly the old post office tower. Who knows? The ranger suggested that we take this opportunity to view the tremendous museum in the basement. Tickets are required, but are free and do not necessarily need to be obtained in advance. I think this is just a procedural counting process, but who really knows? During peak season, I suppose that there is a possibility you might have a long wait. The park passport stamp is at the ticket booth. Don't forget that stamp. Remember my travel hack I taught you about the stickers? If you miss the stamp at the ticket counter, there is another in the basement. We had allocated this time for the National Park Service unit, so let's proceed downstairs into the dark and very red series of rooms filled with displays about Lincoln's life, family, presidency, and the fatal night at Ford's Theater and final death of President Abraham Lincoln at the Petersen house across the street. The displays were not limited to Lincoln and the events at Ford's Theater, but much was presented about the Civil War, the presidency in general, and the city of Washington, D.C. Let me show you a few of the special items that we saw, not related to that fateful night. This is a flag fragment from the flag flown at Fort Sumter during the beginning of the Civil War. Not anything like the original Star-Spangled Banner, but still amazing. There was a wall filled with Lincoln family photographs, a handwritten note, shaving mug, gloves, inkwell, and paperweight of President Lincoln's are also on display. There is a ranger staged in the museum who will answer any of your questions. We found much ado about the security of the president, for Lincoln was the leader of the United States and the Union at that time. Some of the most perilous years in our nation's young history. The possibility of his assassination had to be on the minds of his family, staff, military, and himself. His wife and staff seemed to be concerned, but Lincoln was not. We even read how a shot was fired toward him during an evening stroll, piercing his famous stovetop hat, and he was the only one to laugh it off. I've seen one of his iconic stovepipe hats, where the brim was worn from him tipping and removing his hat. That was so cool. Vital items are protected under temperature control, including this letter from President Lincoln to General George McClellan, relieving him of his duties because of his failure to defeat Confederate General Robert E. Lee. I have to say that this quilt was quite interesting. I will show it to you slowly. Simply historicity at its best, don't you agree? This quilt was made for the 1864 Sanitary Fair and was signed by many well-known politicians, artists, and military and religious leaders. Let me see who I recognize just real fast. Oliver Wendell Holmes, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, George Meade, William T. Sherman, Ulysses S. Grant, Abraham Lincoln, and Millard Fillmore. I'm sure there's a few more that I'm just not seeing right now. Oh yeah, there's Andrew Johnson, Samuel DuPont. I gotta stop. I love this poster about the Homestead Act. As a fan of the West, I am very familiar with the Homestead Act, signed by Abraham Lincoln. You can visit the Homestead National Historical Park just south of the city of Lincoln, which is named for the 16th president, in southeastern Nebraska. Speaking of national park units, don't miss going into the very small visitor center in the basement to grab a souvenir, like a postcard, and getting your passport book stamp. This location had a list of where the stamps could be found. I took pictures for reference because I was missing some. Part of that Day 4 workaround scene. Of course, one of the most popular exhibits was on the assailant, John Wilkes Booth, and the team that conspired and or aided him in the assassination of President Lincoln. One of those was a female. There was quite a bit of controversy over executing the death penalty by the federal government for the first time on a woman. Her name was Mary Surratt, and she would be receiving the death penalty for her involvement. The one item in the museum that was the most compelling was that of the actual murder weapon, a .44 caliber Derringer. Learn of the eerie encounter of Lincoln and Booth. That should make your eyes roll. When Booth fled the theater, he jumped and shattered his ankle or broke his leg, depending on what account you read. Dr. Samuel Mudd, who lived just to the south of D.C., over in Maryland, took care of his injury and is a complex part of this entire conspiracy surrounding this American tragedy. Lincoln fans more than likely know more about Mr. Mudd and the rest of the conspirators. The plot is thick and one that should be investigated more deeply by those whose interest has now been sparked. Let me show you a few more noteworthy items. This is an original piece of lace curtain from the presidential box at Ford's Theater, a framed fragment of wallpaper from the presidential box, the inner door to the presidential box. Though John Wilkes Booth may have used the hole in the door to survey the box and the location of the president and other occupants, he did not make the hole. According to the Ford family descendant, the hole was drilled by the theater manager to allow the theater staff to check on those in the private box whenever they needed. This is one of the pillows that was under Lincoln's head at the Petersen house. Note the bloodstains. And this is Booth's door wedge, a pine bar from a wooden music stand used by John Wilkes Booth as a wedge to keep the outer door to the presidential box closed after his entrance. This china looks familiar. Oh yeah, we saw the Lincoln's presidential punch bowl that matches it at the White House Visitor Center. In Day 1, also on display is a life mask. I had seen death mask before, but never a life mask. All the comments about Lincoln's face are of his declining features and expressions from the toll of the Civil War that was tearing apart this republic. I first mentioned this in my Day 1 video when I told you about the men who sculpted Lincoln for his memorial and the image they wanted to capture. This is a common theme that I have run across. One of the most recent sculptures of Lincoln that I saw was him seated in Grant Park in Chicago. This statue was done by the renowned sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens. Gaudens portrayed Lincoln's loneliness and burden of command. The amazing displays contained items like a switchblade knife, a compass, a signal whistle, knife and sheath. They even have the boot that Dr. Mudd cut away from Booth's leg to treat his injuries. Absolutely unbelievable. He was also carrying multiple handguns as shown in this terrific display. We are staring at ordinary items that became history. Do you remember me mentioning that in day 2 of this 4-day epic adventure when we found some of the items that were in Lincoln's pockets when he had been shot? Oddly, it is reported that one of Lincoln's favorite forms of entertainment was the theater. Speaking of theater, the hallway to the theater is lined with time-stamped drawings recording the events of the day leading to this event that was so transforming. But as you know, we weren't getting into the theater today. And even though I did take a few photos of these events, I think I'll save them for when we actually proceed into the theater on day 4. Tell me in the comments who would become the President of the United States upon Lincoln's death. And also, if you're a subscriber, I want to thank you. And if you're not, why not? Go ahead and subscribe. Let's go ahead and cross the road to go inside the Petersen house, where President Lincoln would draw his final breath on Earth. There are also aftermath exhibits, a gift shop, and snacks if you're getting hungry. I looked back across the front of the Ford's Theater, disappointed that we wouldn't be getting in, but just happy we had the option of tomorrow. I can't stress enough, have a workaround Loose Ends Day when visiting Washington, D.C. Abraham Lincoln died in this house April 15, 1865 at 7:22 a.m. The house was purchased by the United States in 1896. The sign reads that tickets are required, but we just walked in. I think the ranger saw us just crossing the street from the theater. Be sure to go inside the visitor center for Ford's Theater to get clear directions on all procedures. Frankly, I would call ahead to double check opening and times for available programs. I have to read this compelling information. When Abraham Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater on April 14, 1865, soldiers carried the unconscious president across the street to this house, where he died the next morning. Meet the residents who witnessed this historic event. This is really interesting. William and Anna Petersen immigrated from Germany to Washington, D.C. They lived in the basement, and they rented out the rest of the rooms on the other floors as a boarding house to supplement their income. At the time of the assassination, there were approximately 12 people living in the Petersen boarding house. Henry Safford was one of several Petersen boarders who worked in the War Department. On April 14th, he was reading by his second-story window when he saw a commotion in front of Ford's Theater. I raised the window and sang out, asking of those below what was the matter, and they replied that the president had been shot. Safford rushed to the front door. When soldiers carried Lincoln's body from the theater, Safford waved and cried out, "Bring him in here!" William Clark was a 23-year-old War Department clerk who rented the small room where President Lincoln died. Clark was not home when soldiers carried the dying president into his bedroom. He returned the next morning, and after Lincoln was removed from the house, Clark continued to sleep in the same bed. Since the death of our president, hundreds daily call at the house to gain admission to my room. Everybody has a great desire to obtain some memento from my room, so that whosoever comes in has to be closely watched for fear that they will steal something. The same mattress is on my bed, and the same coverlet covers me nightly that covered him while dying. That's kind of weird, don't you think? Oh, Willie Clark, wow. Henry and Julius Ulke were German-born brothers who lived on the top floor. Henry was an accomplished painter, and both were expert photographers. Together, they operated a popular portrait and photography studio on Pennsylvania Avenue. After soldiers removed President Lincoln's body from the Petersen house, the Ulke brothers photographed the room where Lincoln died. Paintings of the death of Lincoln do not seem to correspond with the size of the room, however. What do you think? When I started this video, I remarked about how the news traveled, and part of that is presented in this signage. On the night of April 14, 1865, the injured president was carried out of Ford's Theater and across 10th Street to the Petersen boarding house. The people of Washington crowded onto the street to wait for news of the president's condition. After a long, cold night, the news spread throughout the crowd that President Lincoln had died at 7:22 a.m. In a nearby parlor, once Lincoln had died, the Secretary of War began to operate the executive branch. He had many pressing events, like the capture of Booth and informing Vice President Andrew Johnson of the chain of events that would now place him in the highest office in the land. We left the narrow boarding house to enter the aftermath exhibits. There are 4 floors of exhibits, and guests ride an elevator to start at the 4th floor. The news of the president's death spread over the telegraph in obvious headlines throughout the world. I'm going to limit my discussion of all of these items we saw to this one interesting bit of text. Well, maybe not just this one thing, but I'll try. Shortly before 11 o'clock a.m., the door of the Petersen house opened and soldiers exited, carrying the president's body in a plain pine pine box. They placed it in a horse-drawn wagon, which rattled over the cobblestone streets to the White House, where doctors conducted an autopsy in a second-floor bedroom. If we ever get in the White House and take a tour, I'm going to find out which room that was. Isn't there a Lincoln bedroom? I wonder if that's what that really means. I don't know. One of the surgeons, Dr. Curtis, wrote this account of the autopsy. Suddenly, the bullet dropped out through my fingers and fell, breaking the solemn silence of the room with its clatter into an empty basin that was standing beneath. There it lay upon the white china, a little black mass, no bigger than the end of my finger, dull, motionless, and harmless, yet the cause of such mighty changes in the world's history as we may perhaps never realize. There were accomplices and co-conspirators. Atzerodt was to have killed Vice President Andrew Johnson, but couldn't follow through. Harold was assigned to kill Secretary of State William Seward. The plot was thick and much more intense and detailed than I ever knew. I was so glad to have learned so much more about this event. Tomorrow, I would see the scene of the crime at Ford's Theater. Harold surrendered to federal troops. Not surrendering, Booth was shot at close range by a man named Boston Corbett. The manhunt was now ended after 12 days at a farm in Port Royal, Virginia. Here was a truly unique display. Pieces of ropes which were used in the hanging of the Lincoln conspirators. And then there are the replicas of the hoods that were worn during the trial of the conspirators. The original hoods are part of the National History Museum. Got to put that on the list. I learned a lot at this National Park unit, and I hope that I've sparked your interest to go there. I have one more thing to show you that I saw while there. It wasn't this painting, although I found that a bit weird. This book tower was one of the cleverest displays I have ever seen. These are all books about President Abraham Lincoln. Don't touch! This was a full but shorter day. Time to return to Metro Center, L'Enfant and Branch Avenue. I am so excited to present Day 4 of my epic adventure to Washington, D.C. and just as exciting, thrilling, and outstanding as Days 1, 2, and 3. Not only would this day be one of fulfilling the famous workarounds, like returning to the old Post Office Tower, Supreme Court, and Ford's Theater, the best thing that could have happened occurred today. I got inside the U.S. Capitol. I've spilled the beans again. You are going to love today's adventure as we utilize the Metro to see the central part and eastern end of the National Mall, capturing phenomenal photos on this, the brightest and sunniest day of our 4-day visit to this, our glorious nation's capital. Grab a seat, grab your favorite beverage, and a snack as you travel across America with me. This video is filled with lots of great tips mixed with history, architecture, and the National Mall. For those of you wondering about my National Archives sunglasses, I have an update. It is at the end of this video. Armchair travelers and trucker friends, this will be almost as good as being there. Just like the previous 2 days, we caught the Metro Green Line from Branch Avenue Station to reach L'Enfant Plaza. I'm going to have to do a video on Pierre L'Enfant one day. Unless you are lodging in D.C., which would be ultimate but costly, I highly recommend taking the rail into the city from one of the Maryland or Virginia suburbs. It's cost-effective, timely, convenient, and all-around fun. Riding the train and the challenge of deciding where and when is part of the thrill of an urban adventure. Once at L'Enfant Plaza, we boarded the train to Federal Triangle Station, located under the Post Office building, across from the old Post Office Tower. We needed the orange to Vienna, blue to Franconia, or silver to Ashburn. I'll remind you later how to know which train to board. I knew that the Ford Theater opened at 9 a.m., and we had 45 minutes to get a few things accomplished beforehand. I thought I had missed getting a Park Pass stamp at the White House Visitor Center, so I needed to walk down there. On the way, we mailed our postcards that we had purchased the previous 3 days. Remember, a postcard is one of the least expensive souvenirs and a great memory hook. I do want to point out the District of Columbia government building. The city wants to become the 51st state. Now we returned the direction we came from the train to reach 10th Street. I saw this interesting parking garage entrance. There are plenty of parking garages for those of you choosing to drive into the city. We came alongside a park ranger that worked at Ford's Theater. He had worked there 12 years and loved being on staff at this National Park unit. Ford's Theater and the Petersen house that I presented in Day 3 are located across from each other. The National Park Service works hard to meticulously preserve these historic sites as they appeared at the time of the world-changing events. The building to the south of the Petersen house with a photo of Lincoln in the window is the location of the Aftermath exhibits and the incredible book tower. Now it's 9 o'clock on the nose and we went to the ticket booth to get the required free tickets. To enter the theater, you must pass through the museum. There was a huge group flooding into the museum, and we made a beeline to the staircase that leads to the theater. It said closed. We quickly asked the ranger stationed in the museum what was going on, to which he answered that the theater didn't open until 9:30. It's 9:30. Let's go. I mentioned in day 3 the drawings on the walls leading to the theater had times and records of the day's events for Booth and Lincoln. I briskly walked by them because I wanted to be first to the box. But since this isn't live, I want to take a minute to read a few of them to you. 8 a.m. Lincoln breakfast with his family. 9 a.m. in his room at the National Hotel, John Wilkes Booth rises and dresses. 12 and a half hours later, at 8:30 p.m., the Lincolns arrive at Ford's Theater. The production stops and the orchestra plays Hail to the Chief. Lincoln loved going to the theater. He had attended Ford's Theater at least 9 times during his presidency to relax during the Civil War. 10 p.m., Booth enters the lobby of Ford's Theater and heads up the stairs to the dress circle. He hands his card to the Lincoln footman and enters the back of the President's Theater box. 10 p.m., Lincoln and Mary hold hands. Mary wonders what young Clara will think, and the president replies, "She won't think anything about it." These are the last words Lincoln spoke. Mic drop. We turned the corner, jaunting up the flight of stairs to enter Ford's Theater. Breathe. I darted straight for the box where Lincoln was shot. Glass prevents visitors from direct access and also from taking really good photos. But here it is, the place where President Lincoln's life ended, for all practical purposes. John Wilkes Booth had paused here outside the state box. He wedged the outer door shut with a wooden bar. When the audience roared with laughter, Booth entered the box, gun in hand. Booth shot Lincoln in the back of the head from less than 2 feet away. Mary Todd Lincoln screamed. Booth then stabbed Henry Rathbone in the arm and leaped onto the stage. He shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," to the shocked audience and dashed out of the back door. I have seen the actual chair Lincoln was seated in at the Henry Ford in Dearborn, Michigan. If you've never been to the Henry Ford in Michigan, you are totally missing out, and that place needs to be on everyone's bucket list. When Booth leapt from the box, he got entangled in the decorations of the presidential box and landed off balance on the stage, breaking a bone in his left leg. He moved across the stage to exit the back door, where he mounted a horse in the alley to briskly escape the city. The unconscious president was carried across the street. Watch my Day 3 video for details about that dreadful night and grief-filled morning at the Petersen house. As you can see, Ford's Theater is still a working theater, an inconvenient reality we had learned on Day 3, and why we had to make this Day 4 workaround. Over 1,500 people were at Ford's Theater on April 14th. Most saw John Wilkes Booth escape after shooting President Lincoln. Everyone there agreed that Booth jumped from Lincoln's box onto the stage. As you can see in the photos, the box seats were just on the side of the stage. This was interesting to me. The bullet entered the left back side of Abraham Lincoln's head, about an inch to the left of the medial line of the skull and at the level of his ear. The president never regained consciousness. The closest hospital at the time was the Armory Square Hospital. This facility stood on the south side of the National Mall, near where the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum is now located. On Day 2 of this epic adventure, I took you to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. The distance from Ford's Theater was just over 1/2 of a mile. But sad to say, hospitals were not very sanitary in those days and basically a place to go to die. I was curious about the bullet that dropped in that porcelain dish at the time of the autopsy at the White House. I told you about that in Day 3. I found out that the original .44 caliber bullet is on public display at the National Museum of Health and Medicine in Silver Springs, Maryland. It is displayed alongside some of Lincoln's skull fragments, as well as the probe doctors used to search the wound for the bullet. My bucket list just gets bigger by the week. In conclusion on this part of our adventure, John Wilkes Booth was on the run for 12 days after assassinating President Lincoln. Soldiers of the 16th New York Cavalry were tasked with tracking down Booth and his accomplice David Harold after they had escaped Washington. Booth had maintained a diary, which is one of the many artifacts used by historians to piece together this conspiracy and murder. So much more about Booth and the Petersen house is in my Day 3 video. I hope you watch this complete series and share with a friend. I do have a warning. At one point in this video, your tour guide, she loses it. Now let's walk on southwesterly to reach the old post office tower. I took you there in the wind and rain on Day 2, and the weather was beautiful earlier, but now it was getting a little overcast. What's going on? This memorial and statue of Benjamin Franklin, who is known as a true polymath, poses in front of the 5-star hotel. If you were wondering why the engraving on their base reads printer, that is because the person who gifted the statue was the founder of the Washington Post. I really wanted to go up on the observation deck again to see a little more than we did during our previous visit. Here are some clearer photos from this terrific hidden gem. The old post office tower is the third tallest structure in the city and affords terrific views and is a way lesser known property, even though it is located in the Pennsylvania National Historic District on Pennsylvania Avenue, right between the U.S. Capitol and the White House. I highly recommend this free, amazing gem of a stop, not only for historicity's sake, but the views. We are going to the Capitol today. I hope. Big surprise for you and me coming soon. We crossed the street to re-enter Federal Triangle Station, reached under the William Jefferson Clinton Federal Building. We would take the orange, blue, or silver line just to the very next stop, Smithsonian Station. Of course, we could have just walked the 3 or 4 blocks, but this was our 4th hit-the-ground-running day. We had lots to do, workarounds to solve, and frankly, I love the train. We got off immediately, taking the escalator up to the street level. I made this stop because I wanted to take photographs of the Smithsonian Castle. Completed in 1855, the castle is the Smithsonian Institution signature building. The castle closed Wednesday, February 1st, 2023 for its first major renovation in more than 50 years. We stepped across to see the Professor Joseph Henry statue and photograph the castle, even though construction activity blocked the street across the front. Professor Henry was a scientist and the first president of the Smithsonian Institution. The statue was dedicated in 1883, a few years after his death. Now the weather cleared and we were so close to the Washington Monument and the World War II Memorial Visitor Station, I decided we would walk that way. I stalled a moment and thought, this was my last day here. I was so happy, but sad at the same time. This was almost over. Do you have that feeling when you want to drag something out because you don't want it to end? The sky was perfect for these photos of the Washington Monument. We had a rainy visit to the top in my day 2 video, but I think it was incredible in spite of the weather. I see that twilight talks are held at the Sylvan Theater on the Washington Monument grounds. That sounds like a worthwhile thing to attend. Friday, we would be 225 miles away and unable to attend. Another time, I couldn't help but jump on stage. There were restrooms behind the stage, and I'm taking advantage. I spotted him in the middle of the road, right where I had seen him on the park map. I had wanted to see the John Paul Jones Memorial on day 1, but didn't, so now was my chance. This was a workaround that I didn't expect to be able to catch. You are no doubt familiar with his famous statement, "I have not yet begun to fight." This is the guy. Jones was the first American Revolutionary Naval War hero. Seeing the Jefferson Memorial in the background made me even more nostalgic. That was day 1 of this epic adventure. Wow. Have you seen a lot or what? What has been your favorite video in this series and what place stood out to you the most? I popped over to the World War II Memorial Information booth to get some more Park Passport book stamps I had missed, or at least wasn't sure I had. I had made a list. And by the way, I never got that Dwight D. Eisenhower Memorial Park stamp. Reason 912 to go back to D.C. I heard the clippity-clop of horse hooves. There they were, the U.S. Park Police, passing behind me. This was awesome! Jones and the horses? I never expected this. Trending north across the National Mall, we passed through the World War II Memorial once again. This memorial is one of the most gorgeous I have ever seen anywhere. It is so compelling and grand. A fitting honor for all of those that served and lost their lives in World War II. I thought of Normandy and began to weep. One last photo for the day of the iconic Washington Monument. Do you really believe that? And a last photo of the Carp Pond in Constitution Gardens, where the signers of the Declaration of Independence Memorial is located. See day 1 for more on the 56 signers. I was wanting to get into the lockkeeper's house that we saw on day 1. You might recall it would be open on Thursday. Now, time was precious, and we had the 2 major sites, the U.S. Capitol and the Supreme Court, on the east end of the National Mall to get into, and we were getting hungry. We didn't carry anything into the city this day because we could not take water or food into the Supreme Court, as we had learned on day 2. As we approached the lockkeeper's house, the door was still locked, and the sign read, "Open at 11 a.m. I had missed that part. I looked at the time on the phone. 10:50. I just shook my head and thought, never mind. There's so much to learn and know about when visiting the National Mall. I hope this series has been a help to those of you planning a visit to the U.S. Capitol. And for you, my armchair travelers, I hope you're having a good time as you hang out with me on this adventure. Need to refill your drink or get another snack? We've got a lot to do. We're going to pause here and get a Polish dog, but from a different vendor. It wasn't nearly as delicious as the one we had on day one. Can a hot dog be delicious? I recommend the most north vendor for a Polish dog. We crossed into the ellipse and spoke to a few of the National Guard members. You know, I couldn't help but take a selfie. We quickly crossed in front of the White House. Then, another brief snapshot of where the National Christmas tree is placed. And, of course, the Washington Monument is always in the scene, it seems. William Tecumseh Sherman. Oh, this is all a flashback of day one. The Department of the Treasury, Department of Commerce, and passing alongside the Ronald Reagan Building to drop into the Federal Triangle Station once again. Have you taken a second to subscribe? If you aren't a subscriber and are enjoying this video and the series, please subscribe. This time, a blue, orange, or silver train ride would take us all the way to the Capitol South Station. I will repeat my travel hack regarding knowing which train you need. Always identify the train by the terminus of the line. We needed to travel east, so we needed the orange line to New Carrollton or the blue or silver line to Largo. Within minutes, we were riding the escalator to the ground level just a few blocks south of the U.S. Capitol. The U.S. Capitol is the building that houses the U.S. Congress, made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The Congress has been housed here since 1800. We were going to see if we could get to the gift shop. We had not obtained timed entry tickets online ahead of time. A hard lesson I learned too late. Travel hack when planning a trip to D.C. Be sure to obtain timed entry tickets online ahead of time. Same-day tickets are sometimes available, and there is no guarantee they will be obtained at any of the major landmarks and museums. The two places that I missed getting early tickets for was the Washington Monument and the U.S. Capitol. I had wanted to get inside the White House, but those entries require contacting a member of Congress and a security clearance. We had not investigated that in enough time at all. We were fortunate to secure same-day tickets on day 2 for the Washington Monument, as you saw. And now we were treading the streets uphill to the U.S. Capitol with no expectations at all. On day 2, the lines to enter the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center were really long, and now we followed the path on the south side of the east front of the U.S. Capitol. The U.S. Capitol is one of the icons of world architecture, and President George Washington laid the cornerstone on September 18th, 1793. It had been damaged greatly by British troops during the War of 1812 and subsequently restored. The Capitol was enlarged and the present cast-iron dome built in the 1850s and 1860s. I will be telling you bits and pieces about the Statue of Freedom as we go inside and around the other side of the Capitol grounds. But the Statue of Freedom is the classical figure wearing a helmet with an eagle head and feathers and holds a sheathed sword, shield, and a victory wreath. The statue had been restored in 1993. The House pediment, the center pediment, and the Senate pediment are worth taking a few minutes to appreciate. Today, we were near the front of the line. Those tour buses can definitely make a difference. There weren't any right now. Be sure to understand what is and isn't allowed in each building you plan to visit. After passing through exceedingly high security, more intense than airport security, we entered the Grand Visitor Center. This visitor center was completed in 2008 and is located under the East Plaza. Immediately, one of the hosts approached us to ask if we had reservations, to which I sadly replied that we did not. He said, "Would you like to take the Capitol tour?" Fighting back tears of joy, I immediately responded, "Yes, sir!" Now, I do want to make a note. I think we only had this opportunity because we were not visiting during peak season. So do not expect that you're going to be able to just walk in like we did. Always plan ahead. Get tickets online well ahead of time. And another travel hack, if you want to get into the Senate or House galleries as a visitor, passes must be obtained from your senator or representative's office. Remember, I found that pass on the ground on day 2. That girl lost her really cool souvenir. Also, there is a tunnel from the U.S. Capitol to the Library of Congress. A don't miss stop for sure. But remember those timed entry tickets. See day 2 when we entered and toured the unbelievable and unforgettable Library of Congress. The host pointed to the large information desk below the railing and said we could go there and see if we could catch a tour. We darted down the stairs to the desk. I quickly blurted out asking if we could get on a tour even though we did not have reservations. The gentleman calmly asked if we would like to get on the tour that started in 10 minutes. I could have hit the floor. Absolutely. Would I actually be able to see one of the statues in Statuary Hall that I had been hoping to see for over a decade. He gave us our Capitol tour pass and told us to proceed to the line across the hall. I can't tell you how excited I was. The Capitol Visitor Center is our gateway to American art, architectural achievements, and where history has been and is being made. Once our position in line was secure, Steve stayed there. I did venture around to take photographs of some of the 14 statues that are placed in Emancipation Hall. If I mention or show either of your home state statues at any time during my tour inside the Capitol, drop me a comment and give your state a shout out. Helen Keller, Alabama. Wow, Keller was the first blind and deaf person to graduate from college. And then there's Sacagawea. She's one of my favorites. I've seen the original of this statue in Bismarck, North Dakota, on the state capitol grounds. Does that surprise you? I am a huge Lewis and Clark fan. The replica in the U.S. Capitol was placed there to commemorate the bicentennial of the 1805 Lewis and Clark expedition. Frederick Douglass represents Washington, D.C. His home is not too far, and I had every intention of going there, but that is on the list for next time. I have been to his grave in Rochester, New York. Does that surprise you? Eusebio Francisco Kino. I've mentioned Padre Kino in many of my videos about historic sites in Arizona. He was one of the statues I have always wanted to see. Johnny Cash represents Arkansas. This is one of the newest statues. Now there she is. Freedom. Look at this girl. The original plaster model for the bronze statue of Freedom is the focal point at the west end of Emancipation Hall, in front of the entrance to the exhibition hall. Wait until I take you in there. Visitors will enjoy this surprisingly up-close view of the model that towers 19.5 feet high and weighs approximately 13,000 pounds. She just doesn't really fit in, but here she is. You may remember seeing her at the inauguration back in January of 2025. I'll be sharing more about Freedom when we peruse the Capitol grounds after our tour of the Supreme Court. The line began to move. We were being directed into the South Orientation Theater. The 13-minute film, Out of Many One, was very basic, and afterwards we filed out of the theater and were directed to one of the 5 lines. It was there we were given headsets, over which our specific tour guide would be speaking to those of us in their group. When I put my headset on, I knocked my sunglasses to the floor and the lens popped out and the frame around the lens was cracked. Yikes! I didn't really care. That didn't matter. I was inside the Capitol. I was going on a tour. This structure has undergone many changes over the decades and last 2 centuries, and I will take you along to the places our guide took us. I truly hope that you will take this tour one day. I want to take it again. The tour went at a fast clip, and I was pretty distracted by all that I was seeing and needing to take pictures of for you. I was that person, the one at the end of the line that didn't always keep up. As we passed through the hallways and by doorways, I was distracted at every turn. There were a couple of times that photographs were not allowed. The first major room we went into was the old Supreme Court chamber, which was utilized between 1810 and 1860. This is the room where the famous Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall presided in for 20 of his 34 years. We'll learn a little more about him when we get into the Supreme Court. In just a few minutes, I promise. Historians and law students will be familiar with the cases decided in this room, but everyone should be familiar with the Dred Scott decision. We have been to the courthouse where the lower court cases for Dred Scott were presented in St. Louis, Missouri. You're not surprised, are you? I tried to snap photos of everything. I did what I could, and the lighting is not the greatest here. We were on the move, and some of my pictures are on the move, too. A little too blurry for me to even share. What hath God wrought? Samuel F.B. Morse. On May 24, 1844, in the old Supreme Court room, now the Law Library in the Capitol, Morse sent the above message to Baltimore, Maryland, by the first electromagnetic telegraph instrument. That's incredible! By the way, wrought means fashioned in this context. We also went into the old Senate chamber. The United States Senate met in this chamber from 1810 until 1859, an era known as the Senate's Golden Age. Here were heard some of the most eloquent and passionate speeches in the nation's history. Senators such as Daniel Webster of Massachusetts. Wait a minute, I think New Hampshire claims Daniel Webster most of the time. Henry Clay of Kentucky and John C. Calhoun of South Carolina met in dramatic confrontation as tensions between the North and South escalated. The Missouri Compromise, the Webster-Hayne debate, and the Compromise of 1850 were all debated in this chamber. Simply incredible. Historians, are you weeping yet? Modeled after ancient amphitheaters, the room reflects the efforts of architects Benjamin Henry Latrobe and Charles Bulfinch. Remember Bulfinch? Remember his gatehouse that we saw on day one? We'll probably see his name again. Original works of art include the portrait of George Washington by Rembrandt Peale, the carved gilded eagle and shield, and the smaller curved desk on the dais used by the vice president. I'm almost breathless. I had always heard of Statuary Hall, and that was where I was wanting to go. But I learned that the statues donated from the individual states were literally everywhere. As we saw in Exhibition Hall, there were 14 down there. By 1850, so many new states had been admitted to the Union that the House and Senate had outgrown their chambers. It was decided to enlarge the Capitol by adding grand wings to the ends of the original building. In 1851, Daniel Webster, who we just mentioned, who had served in both houses of Congress, delivered one of his famous orations at the ceremony to lay the cornerstone for the new wings. The House occupied its current chamber in 1857, and the Senate moved into its chamber in 1859. I wish we could have gotten in those another day. The old hall of the House was later dedicated as National Statuary Hall. Congress invited each state to contribute 2 statues of its most notable citizens. Today, these statues are displayed in the National Statuary Hall, the Rotunda, the Capitol Visitor Center, and in corridors throughout the building. And we'll find out that they are also under the Rotunda at the crypt. Let's see who's in here. The crypt is the space beneath the rotunda because of its resemblance to similar areas in churches and chapels used for tombs. That's why it is called the crypt. The sandstone columns in the Doric style were installed in the 1820s under architect Charles Bulfinch, who completed the construction of the Capitol in 1826. Remember, I told you I'd mention him again really soon. The central white marble compass stone in the center floor marks the center of the Capitol and is the point where the city is divided into quadrants: northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest. And I have told you in a previous video that all streets and everything is directionally oriented from the U.S. Capitol. Our guide told us that it was understood that George Washington would be buried here in the center of this room. Since the president was buried at Mount Vernon already, it was determined that he would not be reinterred to this crypt. Also in the crypt is a gold case and replica of the Magna Carta, presented as a bicentennial gift to the Congress of the United States from the Parliament of the United Kingdom. The earliest extant of the Magna Carta was atop this gold case, and it was on display for 1 year before being returned to England. To see one of the original Magna Cartas, see my Day 2 video when we went to the National Archives, one of the most wonderful places in Washington, D.C. This has been some of the most captivating 4 days of my life. Now, the Rotunda. We are inside of the Capitol Dome that we see on the exterior. In ways, these are like 2 different things, yet they are one piece of architecture, inspiring different emotions from the inside and from the out. The Rotunda connects the Senate and House of Representatives wings. The Rotunda is the heart and center of the Capitol. Although it sees no legislative function, it is a ceremonial space where state funerals have been held since the time of Abraham Lincoln for presidents, members of Congress, military heroes, and eminent citizens. Visiting heads of state and special guests are often received in the Rotunda, and many historic events have been celebrated there. Just stare at the center and imagine the history that has happened right there, just right there. Hanging in the Rotunda are 4 giant canvases painted by John Trumbull, an aide-de-camp to George Washington. He painted these scenes of the American Revolution. Paintings by 4 other artists depict events associated with the exploration and settlement of the United States. Can you feel the history and the importance of this building, of this room? I felt overwhelmed. Can you name 3 people that have laid in state in this magnificent rotunda? Back to these paintings. The frames are set into the curved stone walls of the rotunda, but hold flat canvas paintings. The pine frames, carved with fluted columns. Greek keys and rosettes were in place by 1824, and some were gilded by 1826, when the 4 paintings by John Trumbull were installed. The rest were gilded in 1828. The frames were slightly redesigned and regilded in 1905. The most recent conservation project preserved as much of the century-old gildings as possible, repaired damage, and toned the new gilding to match the old. And then there are these historic benches. 14 of the 16 cast iron and wooden benches under the paintings are historic, dating back to 1859. They were designed for use in the hall of the House of Representatives. You just stumble over history every inch of this place. After passing by the entrance to the Speaker of the House's office, we passed into the powerful National Statuary Hall, formerly the Old Hall of the House. The National Statuary Hall collection includes statues provided by each state depicting 2 deceased individuals selected for historic renown or for distinguished civic or military service. Congress passed legislation in 2000 to permit states to replace a statue after 10 years, allowing the collection to reflect more recent honorees. After reading that, I thought, that could be good, that could be bad. This is the room I had always dreamed of seeing. As I have traveled this nation, and as a historian, I have heard about the people who were chosen by states to represent them in Statuary Hall. Although my understanding of Statuary Hall has been expanded after this visit, this room brought me to tears. Some of you might think this is silly, but I hope that some of you understand the impact that these individuals have had on countless numbers of individuals, not only in their home states, but crossing state lines in many cases. They cover not only decades, but centuries of American history in every sort of circumstance. According to this clock, if it's really working and not like the one at Old Epic Grill, we had been on this tour an hour so far. It was flashing by like seconds to me. Junipero, the father of the California missions, was one of the statues I wanted to see the most. Ronald Reagan is the other California statue. When Ronald Reagan took the oath of office as president, he placed his hand on Junipero's Bible. Reagan's statue is in the rotunda. There's Edison. I've been to his laboratory and factory in New Jersey and his birthplace home in Milan, Ohio. I am privileged to have been to so many of these places that were a part of the lives of these legends. How can I not point out Dr. Marcus Whitman, who was a missionary that crossed the Oregon Trail to reach the Oregon Territory? I've seen the tomahawk that was used to brutally murder him. And there's Rosa Parks. I have stood on the corner in Montgomery, Alabama, where she boarded the bus on that historic day. And I have sat in that very bus at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Of course, the men from Texas and New Hampshire are important to me. Can you get a small understanding of why this meant so much for the workaround to have worked out? I also realized I have some homework to do. There were many people in here that I have never heard of. I'm sure they deserve my attention. These men and women were inventors, authors, military men, patriots, spiritual leaders, and much more. I am so glad that they are honored here in our nation's Capitol building. The tour group was moving on to my great dismay. We had to return our headsets, and we had one more place of amazing intrigue and content to experience in the U.S. Capitol. The exhibition hall behind the plaster, Miss Freedom. I was mentally and physically exhausted, but we still had to see these exhibits and go to the Supreme Court. I will show you some of the most outstanding items that I saw. The desk and pen used by President Lyndon Baines Johnson during the signing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Jr. was in attendance. Be sure to watch my Day 1 video when I take you to the exact spot on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial where Dr. King gave his powerful I Have a Dream speech. Of course, the transportation display caught my attention. There's my Smart Trip card. Yellowstone National Park is my second favorite national park, and thanks to sketches and paintings of Thomas Moran, this became America's first national park in 1872. A lot of the items were related to senators and congressmen. Remember just a few minutes ago, I read from the plaque of Samuel F.B. Morse in the first telegraph? This table was used by Abraham Lincoln at his second inauguration. The metal was from leftovers of the recently cast Capitol dome. Well, these people didn't let anything go to waste. I don't blame them. I'm like that too. And this reminds me of the desk we saw on Day 1 at the White House Visitor Center that the architect made from leftover wood when they built the White House. I never left a minute to waste on this adventure. There are gift shops, a cafe, and of course restrooms in the Capitol Visitor Center. And you're not going to believe this, but after being so overwhelmed by the Capitol tour and this exhibition hall, I totally forgot to go into the gift shop. I had already gotten the best gift though. I got on the tour. Next stop, the Supreme Court. No water, no food, no problem today. Tipping our hat to the guard, we pass through security screening into the stark white marble Supreme Court building. The sign says for us to be quiet. I found out why we were supposed to be quiet. There are offices located in the public spaces. Here are the hours for the building, gift shop, and cafe. The smell permeating the halls from the cafe was wonderful. Do you know how hungry I was? That one little Polish dog wore off a long time ago. My tears were drying and I had regained my composure. One of the security guards was my age and grew up in Houston also. Small world. I don't even know how we got on that conversation. The Supreme Court building opened to the public in 1935. This Temple of Justice is both a work of art and a working office building, as I just mentioned. The main hallway is filled with information, memorabilia, and artifacts from the history of the Supreme Court, from its beginning to the most recent years. The U.S. Constitution established 3 branches of government. We've seen the White House, the executive branch, the Capitol, the legislative branch, and now we are standing in the U.S. Supreme Court building, the judicial branch. The displays tell of the justices and cases. Of course, some of the information is positive and some is negative about these black-robed individuals. Most of you have heard of John Jay and the Federalist Papers of 1818. Do you know what Chief Justice he was? Which one? Was he the first, the second, or the third? I'll tell you in a little bit. Actually, I'll tell you right before we walk out the doors. My New Hampshire friends, did you know that the state's motto was challenged in the Supreme Court and the motto was upheld? Live free or die. There are between 70 and 80 cases decided during each term, and 5 or more justices constitute a majority. Ronald Reagan nominated Sandra Day O'Connor, a woman exceedingly successful in law and political positions in Arizona, as the first female associate justice. There are personal items from her 24 years on the land's highest court. Some of the items were really interesting and some were just flat out cool, like this bench chair, the only one known to survive from the Marshall Court. Remember, we were over in the Marshall Court, over in the Capitol building? The courts are referred to by the Supreme Court Chief Justice's name, like the Marshall Court was headed by Chief Justice John Marshall. I've said a few times in this series how ordinary items become extraordinary and become an iconic part of history. Like the yellow ribbon around the old oak tree that we saw at the Collecting Memories Gallery at the Library of Congress in Day 2. Well, it's the same with this chair. It's just a simple chair, and now it's a part of huge history. I read that the black robes have been a centuries-old tradition and worn throughout all levels of courts, indicating impartiality and decorum to legal proceedings, if you were wondering. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of the most outspoken and well-known of the associate justices. We have been to her grave at Arlington National Cemetery in a section for judges. I really enjoyed seeing the personal items from the different members of the court. We learned that no paintings of living judges are hung on the hallowed halls of the Supreme Court building. Architect alert! As we were wandering around looking at all the amazing displays, I saw this sign pointing down a side corridor to a spiral staircase for viewing only. Inside the doorway ahead is one of the more interesting aspects of the architecture of the Supreme Court building, a self-supporting elliptical spiral staircase. It is one of the 2 identical staircases designed for the building by Cass Gilbert. It is unclear whether Gilbert chose to use this rare form for practical reasons or simply for its exceptional visual beauty? Maybe both, huh? The marble was quarried in Alabama. Each of the staircases has 136 steps that complete 7 spirals while ascending 5 stories from the basement to the 3rd floor. The cantilever design, that's like from my favorite architect, Frank Lloyd Wright. Anyway, sorry. The cantilever design of the staircases eliminate the need for a central support, as each step is anchored into the marble wall on one end and rests upon the step below it. On each floor's landing, bronze door frames are decorated with neoclassical motifs, including leaves, urns, and floral decorations. Exquisite. I would love to walk up and down those steps, but I certainly understand and appreciate it being close to the general public, don't you? Another New Hampshire note. How many of you, my New Hampshire friends, know of Chief Justice Harlan Fiske Stone from Chesterfield, a classmate of President Calvin Coolidge? Due to having 4 terms as president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt appointed 7 Supreme Court justices, all during Stone's tenure. Be sure to watch my video about Roosevelt's beloved Campobello, the place he grew up enjoying and having the life-changing event of contracting polio and becoming paralyzed there. Uniquely, Stone enjoyed summering in Maine in the Down East Acadia region, not far from FDR's New Brunswick escape. The links to my Down East, Acadia, and Campobello videos are in the description below. One of the main things that you will see, you can't miss it, is the statue of seated Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall. He is honored because he is the nation's longest-serving Chief Justice. He served for 34 years between 1801 and 1835. There were other informational posters about significant Supreme Court cases and related photographs along most of the hallways. We saw this painting, Antonin Scalia, also a Reagan appointee. We have been to the entrance of the ranch where he died in 2016 in a remote region of West Texas. I just had to walk up this staircase. It's inviting, isn't it? It's the way to the actual courtroom and the Great Hall. We found the actual Supreme Court courtroom. I have to admit it was nothing like I imagined. You know, you see pictures, but then when you see something in person, it's like, okay. It was much smaller than I expected. This is where the justices meet to hear oral argument and announce decisions. And here we are. How cool is this? Each year, from the first Monday in October through late June, the justices meet in the courtroom, the Supreme Court's public meeting space. Generally, 2 types of sittings take place in the courtroom: oral argument and non-argument sessions. Oral argument is a time for attorneys to make a presentation to the court and answer questions posed by the justices. Afterwards, the justices meet in private to discuss the cases, vote, and write opinions. In non-argument sessions, the court meets to announce its decisions and handle administrative matters. The justices sit on the bench in order of seniority. The Chief Justice is always considered the most senior and sits in the center. Among the associate justices, seniority is determined by the length of service. The most senior associate justice sits to the Chief Justice's right, and each justice then alternating left to right. Groups can go inside the courtroom for a 30-minute lecture every hour on the half hour. We chose to pass on this part. These tours are not held the days that the court is in session. I recommend that you go to the Supreme Court website to find out about sitting in the gallery when the court is in session. I think I'll look into doing that. Opposite the courtroom is the Great Hall, a grand and majestic space, filled with the bust of the former Chief Justices along each side. How many names do you remember or recognize? And now I'm giving you an answer to one of my questions. John Jay was the first Chief Justice. Can you name the current Supreme Court justices? Do you know the name of the Chief Justice? Do you know how many of them are women? It's time to walk out that front door, which exits onto the front plaza. Remember, we saw Paul come out in day 2. Now you can have a view from inside out. It's a shame the striking structure was masked. I wonder what they're doing. And there's the Capitol. It was time to start winding down the day, and we were going to pass on going to the Botanical Garden, but rather choosing to walk around the Capitol grounds and back to the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial in Union Square. The sky was picture-perfect blue, and I wanted to get some great photos for you. And I want to tell you about freedom and the Capitol Dome. It's all very interesting. The Capitol grounds, also known as Capitol Park, was a baseball field in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Capitol is situated on 58.8 acres of pristine land at the east end of the National Mall. Winding paths, memorial trees, and beautiful flowers are part of the plan completed in 1892 by renowned landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted, whom I've spoken of often throughout my videos. We passed back by the red brick summer house. Olmsted described the plan as very simple. His objective was to be a dignified park-like setting for the Capitol. Olmsted was big on parks, and you'll want to find out all the parks that he has designed around this nation. I barely caught pictures of the granite lamp piers and bronze fountains. It was by pure accident. The thing that I found interesting about these granite lamp piers, Bay of Fundy granite was used for the massive piers that Olmsted designed to hold bronze gas-burning light fixtures. The Bay of Fundy? We were just at the Bay of Fundy when we went to Campobello Island. The Bay of Fundy. Do you know where the Bay of Fundy is? Do you know what's so interesting about the Bay of Fundy? Do you know why the Bay of Fundy is exciting and interesting and historical? You'll have to watch that video. But that really thrilled me just to see that part. Now, at the back of the Capitol is the Olmsted Terrace. It was constructed in 1884 to 1892 on the northwest and south sides of the Capitol. The marble terrace provided a strong visual platform, correcting the illusion that the massive building was about to slide down the hill. It also added much needed space for storage, shops, and committee rooms. Well, we need to be functional. Here is a photograph from Abraham Lincoln's inauguration where you can see the Capitol Dome was not yet complete. However, the bronze freedom we now see atop the Capitol was placed there on December 2nd, 1863, at Lincoln's insistence, stating this would be an act to help regain cohesiveness of the torn republic. So we need to realize that it was during Lincoln's tenure as president that the Capitol Dome was completed and that Miss Freedom was placed on the top of the Capitol Dome. It's like everything is interwoven, and as we go from place to place, they all tie in to somewhere else. It's just so fascinating to learn and to understand. I found this great information in the exhibition hall about freedom. It said workers clean and refurbish the Statue of Freedom. The Statue of Freedom needs periodic maintenance, from sharpening the lightning rods in the figure's headdress to checking for failed caulking and weak points in the metal. You might remember that I showed you the lightning rods that had been replaced on the Washington Monument in day 2. They're so small. I was shocked how small they were. They also had this thing about worker tags, and they had some of these tags that they'd found. It said workers restoring the Statue of Freedom in 1993 found dozens of metal tags left by their predecessors long ago, laborers leaving their mark. That's so exciting. The Capitol Dome is the dome situated above the United States Capitol, which reaches upwards to 288 feet in height and 96 feet in diameter. Remember, we were underneath it in the rotunda? About all those things interweaving. The dome was designed by Thomas U. Walter, the fourth architect of the Capitol, and was constructed between 1855 and 1866 at a cost of, what? $1,047,291? Wait, am I getting that right? Yeah, 6 zeros, 1 million. Wow. The dome is not stone, but cast iron, carefully painted to appear to be made of the same stone as the main Capitol building. I was excited to take these terrific photos of the Grant Memorial. He is in what is called Union Square, an 11-acre public plaza at the foot of Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. It encompasses the Ulysses S. Grant Memorial and the 6-acre Capitol reflecting pool that was constructed in 1971. The Grant Memorial was placed there in 1924. Views differ as to whether the square is just east of the National Mall or is itself the eastern end. We were then on our way walking a few blocks south to Federal Center Southwest Station to transfer trains at L'Enfant Plaza to catch the Green Line to Branch Avenue to mark this adventure complete. What you're watching is the reason we stayed at the National Zoo for 4 hours. This was good timing. He's having breakfast. When we only planned to pop in for one. Giant bamboo crunching pandas, and they are ridiculous, magnificent, and absolutely absolutely hilarious. But before I show you everything we found at this incredible place, let me show you something I discovered that almost nobody talks about. This marble eagle, it once stood atop New York's original Pennsylvania station before it was torn down in 1963. And this is one of only a few that survived. And most visitors walk right past it. And this is Bonnie. She's a camera-hogging orangutan. She just crossed from one building to another 60 feet above my head on a cable system called the O-line. I promise you, the National Zoo delivers moments like this around every single corner. I had read the sign about the O-line and had so hoped that we would get to see an ape cross overhead. Would we? Did we? I think you know. We're in Washington, D.C., a city celebrating America's 250th birthday. And this free Smithsonian Zoo is one of the most underrated gems in the entire city. Whether you're visiting or you just love armchair travel, stick with me. I've got 4 hours of discovery to share in this video. But don't panic, this video isn't 4 hours long. Well, we're back at Branch Avenue. Another day in D.C. This one's going to be really different. We began our morning bright and early at Branch Avenue Station on the Metro's Green Line, heading north into the city. If you're navigating DC subway for the first time, here's my honest experience. I'm good with directions, but subway systems can turn me around. Don't be embarrassed if you feel the same way. It happens to everyone. I give more detailed advice in my epic 4-day adventure to DC. The links are below to these don't-miss Americana-filled videos. We transferred at Gallery Plaza onto the Red Line, heading towards Shady Grove, speeding 10 stories underground to get to Woodley Park Zoo, Adams Morgan Station, which helpfully puts the word zoo right in its name. That's reassuring when you're a visitor. As we reached street level, I must have looked a little uncertain, scanning for signs. A man in a wheelchair stationed along the brick wall near the exit spoke up and asked, "Are you looking for the zoo?" He pointed up Connecticut Avenue and told us it was 4 blocks away. That's the kind of interaction that reminds me why I love exploring cities on foot. Now here's something I wish I'd known beforehand. The escalator at Woodley Park Station, well, it's 204 feet long, making it the longest escalator in Washington, D.C., and the 3rd longest in the entire metro system, behind only Bethesda and Wheaton. In fact, the Wheaton escalator, just up the road in Maryland, is the longest single-span escalator in the entire Western Hemisphere. When you find yourself on this moving staircase, wondering when it ends, you're not imagining it. You're essentially riding 10 stories underground. Yes, the Cleveland Park Station is also a valid option, and Metro itself has noted it's actually a short, slightly downhill walk to the zoo from there. But honestly, I'm glad I took Woodley Park. That escalator is an experience in itself. The walk up Connecticut Avenue is uphill. This is worth knowing. The zoo sits at the top of the ridge, and by the time you've walked the entire 163-acre grounds, you'll have climbed roughly 200 feet in elevation. Wear comfortable shoes. Take water, and rest assured the zoo has well-placed water refill stations. One very important thing before you go, you must get free passes in advance online at the National Zoo's website. You can scan for a pass there, though, if you forget. Walk-ups are not guaranteed. We got ours ahead of time and arrived about 5 minutes after opening, and the park was almost eerily quiet. Few staff, few visitors, and honestly, most of the animals were still waking up. Here's a National Zoo history moment. This place was founded in 1889 by an act of Congress, quote, "for the advancement of science and the instruction and recreation of the people." It's the only federally funded zoo in the United States, and admission has always been free. The 163-acre park was designed by none other than Frederick Law Olmsted, the same landscape architect behind New York's Central Park and dozens of other iconic American green spaces. He designed the zoo within Rock Creek Park, and it officially opened in 1891. The park's main visitor path is named Olmsted Walk. This was once the carriageway and even a roadway for cars well into the late 1950s. We popped into the visitor center to use the restrooms and orient ourselves. Then we were off. But a stop at the potty was also in order. While you're in the stall, you'll be reading funny signs about poop. Our first stop, the Reptile House Discovery Center. I'll be honest, I walked into the reptile house expecting that familiar smell, you know, the one, but this place, it didn't smell at all. And inside, it was absolutely stunning. We saw alligator snapping turtles, odd-looking creatures with rigid shells and jaws powerful enough to snap a broomstick. This guy's creepy. A massive head, spiked shell, and long, sharp claws make this turtle look tough. But instead of hunting down dinner, it waits open-mouthed in the dark mud to lure prey into its powerful jaws with a worm-like tongue. I'll say it again. He's creepy. He looks like he's in desperate need of something, doesn't he? Dude.
Like a pressure wash.
He needs a pressure wash. That's a good one. Look, oh my, his throat's gonna make me gag. You're the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen. And I thought the guy across the hall was the weirdest. And speaking of creepy, we found snake-necked turtles.
Okay.
That's just weird. This is like the weirdo section. Look at you. These are snake-neck turtles. Who would have thought? Which look exactly as bizarre as they sound. Long, serpentine necks on a turtle body? I have never seen snake-neck turtles. Totally weird. Here is an Aldebaran tortoise, and yes, I'd be hiding my face if I'd made that kind of mess in public view. The Aldebaran tortoises, one of the largest land tortoises on Earth, are native to Seychelles. And the always captivating frogs, vibrant, jewel-colored poison dart frogs in electric blues, reds, and yellows. I got great video in here. Poisonous frogs and all kinds of colorful frogs. These guys are my favorite reptiles. Don't skip this building. One of the things I truly wanted to see was Smokey Bear's home. This stop was a personal one for me, and if you've seen my video on the Smokey Bear Historical Park in Capitan, New Mexico, you'll appreciate why. The National Zoo honors its most famous former resident with well-placed historic signage marking where Smokey Bear once lived. Here's the remarkable backstory. In 1950, a bear cub was found clinging to a burned tree in the Lincoln National Forest in New Mexico, his paws badly scorched from a wildfire. He was nursed back to health, and in June of that year, he was transferred here to the National Zoo to serve as the living symbol of the Smokey Bear Wildfire Prevention Campaign. He lived here until his death in 1976, and he became so beloved that, get this, the U.S. Postal Service gave him his own zip code because at his peak, Smokey was receiving up to 13,000 letters per week. That's incredible. Near the squirt zone, this guy thought he'd squawk the pelican off the rock. Not happening. That's all, folks. We also saw the Indian bear, the only kind of bear native to South America and the inspiration for Paddington Bear. Not quite the same gravitas as Smokey, but still wonderful. Was it something I said? Bye. See you next time. And then there's Amazonia. Amazonia was one of our biggest surprises. This exhibit recreates the biodiversity of the Amazon River Basin, and it's extraordinary. Stingrays gliding past us in the tanks below. Ancient, silent, somehow both graceful and alien all at the same time. You gonna come up the wall for me? Can you do that? Come on. You can come up the wall. You can do it. Come on. You look like a sombrero. You're awesome. And there's your friend. Nice. Y'all are a cute couple. Cute couple. The fish tanks are vivid and well-lit, showcasing the staggering variety of Amazonian river life. Yeah, you. What are you? Oh. Those are funky, aren't they? And then there's you. Hi. Okay. and your friend. Rise up, enter the forest. Above us, free-flying scarlet ibises. Birds with that shocking, almost unreal shade of orange-red shared the canopy with roseate spoonbills, whose pink feathers looked like they were painted on by someone with a very theatrical sensibility. These birds are not behind glass. They fly freely throughout the atrium around you and walk on the path leading the way. Jump down? Come on, jump down for me. You can do it. Come on. Jump. No! Don't tell me no. Jump. Go ahead. Y'all can do it. You can do it. Really. Up this one. You're gorgeous. Simply gorgeous. Yes, you are.
You mean Postal? Lead the way.
Great tour guide. The plants in here are so stunning as well. He's opening his mouth. Did you see him? Oh, he did a big yawn. You can see the fish in the mock river from the overgrown birdcage, as I like to call it. More colorful frogs. Look at these blue guys' feet. Simply comical. You should see what he's doing with his mouth. The Coral Lab, genuinely stunning. This is conservation in action. Researchers propagating coral to help repopulate dying reefs around the world. It's science you can watch happening in real time. The think tank exhibit focuses on animal cognition, how different animals think, problem solve, and communicate. We found the apes doing what apes do, being absolutely irresistibly silly. What are you looking for? You know. But the moment I'd been hoping for was outside. Connecting two ape buildings, the think tank and the Great Ape House, above the zoo's walking path is the O-line, a series of cables strung between towers that allows the orangutans to travel freely between facilities on their own schedule. And yes, we saw Bonnie making the crossing. Watching a great ape travel hand over hand 60 feet above your head, calm as you please, looking down at the humans below with what I can only describe as mild amusement. It's one of those moments that stays with you. Bonnie is a ham, and I loved watching her red hair blowing in the breeze. She took her sweet time, and I'm convinced she was loving the enthralled and gawking crowd as she gracefully, yet playfully, made her way from one ape house to the other. Orangutans are among the most intelligent animals on Earth. They're the largest arboreal mammals, meaning they spend more of their lives in trees than any other great ape. In the wild, they're critically endangered, with populations in Borneo and Sumatra devastated by habitat loss. And then the birdhouse. The birdhouse was our final stop before heading back to the Pandas, and it delivered more history than I expected. Walking through the foyer, I stopped cold. There it was, a towering mosaic archway. It was original to the 1928 building, decorated with toucans, parrots, songbirds, and tropical flowers. It was salvaged from the original architecture and relocated to this lobby. It's gorgeous. Architecture and history, always a showstopper for me. There are different rooms in the birdhouse highlighting different bird environments. The door attendant told us to be sure to admire the birds in the exterior aviaries. Once outside, as we turned a corner, I spotted this. It had some sort of significance, and of course, the sign depicting an old world building in a black and white photo drew my glance deeper. This is the Penn Station Eagle, made of Tennessee pink marble and carved by sculptor Adolph Weinman. It was one of 22 eagles that decorated the facade of New York's original Pennsylvania station before it was demolished in 1963. A demolition that so outraged the public, it directly led to the creation of the National Historic Preservation Act. Hear, hear. Smithsonian Secretary Dillon Ripley lobbied the Pennsylvania Railroad for one of the surviving eagles, and it arrived here in 1965. Most visitors walk right past it. I saw many do that. Now you won't. And then the flamingos. I have a deep and entirely unashamed affection for flamingos. They're my favorite bird. Seeing them here, impossibly pink in their characteristic one-legged stance, it was a highlight of the day. Flamingos are pink because of the carotenoid pigments in the algae and crustaceans they eat. A flamingo raised without that diet would actually be white. Their iconic one-legged stance? Well, scientists believe it may help conserve body heat, and flamingos actually have better balance on one leg than two. I have a really bad habit of standing on one leg when posing for a photo. I really need to stop that. Now there are the pandas, Bao Li and Qing Bao. And this was the reason that we ended up staying for 4 hours? Well, not really. It was all the other stuff, but we wanted to end our trip here. Because when we had arrived at the zoo, we did catch 2 pandas having breakfast out in their yards. And as the visitor tip, the panda house opens at 9 a.m. And since it was located at the front of the zoo and we were early, we chose to return to the panda house last. This was good timing. He's having breakfast. Or she, not sure. So cool. As we curved around the walkway, we caught this red panda strolling in his yard. What a doll! Meet Bao Li, a male whose name translates to treasure and energetic, and Qing Bao, a female whose name means green treasure. Both arrived at the National Zoo on October 15, 2024, aboard a dedicated FedEx Panda Express Boeing 777, and made their public debut on January 24, 2025, after a quarantine period. They are 4-year-old teenagers in panda years, too young to breed yet, and they are, I cannot stress this enough, completely ridiculous while eating bamboo. They sit there like toddlers who have been handed an entire stalk of celery, and they just go for it. It is genuinely one of the funniest, most joyful things I've filmed at any zoo anywhere. Here's your panda deep dive. Giant pandas eat up to 40 pounds of bamboo per day and spend 10 to 16 hours doing it. Bamboo is so nutritionally poor that they have almost no time left over for anything else. The National Zoo is the only place in the United States where you can see giant pandas for free. The zoo pays, get this, $1 million per year to China's Wildlife Conservation Association to house them. Money that goes directly into panda conservation research. Bao Li has a personal connection to the zoo. His mother, Bao Bao, was born here in 2013. His grandparents, the beloved Mei Zhang and Ting Ting, lived here for 23 years. So in a real sense, this place is in his family history. The panda cams are monitored by a corps of specially trained volunteers. 40 cameras covering every inch of their habitat. We found the monitoring room where 2 staff members sat watching the behavior watch screens. Every moment of these pandas' lives is observed, documented, and studied. But I do want to share other highlights that we saw of great animals at this this zoo, because this zoo has so much more. Here's a quick tour of everything else that made us wait. Come back. The elephants are magnificent. The Asian elephant habitat gives them real space to roam. The lions were napping, deeply, profoundly, magnificently napping, the way only big cats can, with absolute zero concern for the crowd watching them. The tiger, however, was wide awake and swimming. Sumatran tigers are one of the few big cats that genuinely love the water. And boy, this guy really loved the water. And watching one glide through the pool, massive paws pushing through the water like it was born to do this, is the kind of thing that reminds you how extraordinary these animals are.
Funny. Hello. Hi. He's a toy mister. No. The toy is destroying his toys.
Dám rồi vậy. Xe sushi cái đó. Here we go for it. Here we go. No.
You tricked us.
Better if you're over on this side.
In the kids' farm area, goats, cows, alpacas, one of whom was stretched out directly in front of a fan, doing what I can only describe as maximum relaxation, and a donkey who was scratching his neck on a stick with such focused, total satisfaction that several of us stopped and watched for an embarrassing amount of
I thought he
time.
was heaving. Sorry, it looked like you were heaving. Oh, that feels good. Ooh. Okay. You come say hi? Hi. Hi. What are you doing?
Lemurs with those wild amber eyes staring at you like they know something you don't know. And scattered throughout the grounds, historic signs. A marker about Frederick Law Olmsted's design vision for the park. Interpretive panels about conservation history. A movie star dinosaur from the 1960s. And I gotta tell you, this zoo rewards slow walkers. By the time we were needing to leave the zoo, it was afternoon and we'd been on our feet for 4 hours, climbing 220 feet of elevation across 163 acres. We'd built up an appetite, but we did a smart move and took another potty break. And learned another poop fact while in there. Just across the street from the zoo entrance, we spotted Falafel Inc. and went in simply because it looked healthier than the burger and pizza options nearby. What we didn't realize, we had chosen what is considered one of the best quick-serve spots in that entire section of D.C. And those za'atar fries I didn't order, I regret not ordering them. Don't make my mistake. This is what this place is famous for. Now I know. Traveling is a learn-as-you-go kind of experience in life. The falafel itself was outstanding, crispy outside, perfectly herbed inside, exactly what you need after a full morning at the zoo. We returned to Woodley Park Station, but we took the elevator down to the mezzanine level because we had more stops to make before 5 p.m. and I had no desire to ride the world's most dramatic escalator again. We hopped the red line to Union Station. Washington, D.C. has hundreds of things to see. Museums, monuments, history on every corner, and honestly, before this visit, I might have told you the zoo was optional. I was wrong. This is 163 acres of living conservation, living history, and living wonder. All of it is free, all of it extraordinary. Now next, we're heading to the National Postal Museum, which is right by Union Station, and like the zoo, it's one of those places I completely miscalculated. I thought it would take an hour. Boy, was I wrong about that too. I'll see you there. From mail history, from the Titanic and 9/11 to the world's first stamp. Who knew? Ugly shoes on the ground on my epic 5th day on a walking tour of Washington, D.C. Happy 250th birthday to my country. Please leave me a comment. Share this video with a friend, and I want you to know that by subscribing and turning on notifications, you help me out a lot. Okay, I need you to look at this. I'm going to be showing you genuinely rich items from the past that you never considered or imagined. I walked into this museum with basically zero expectations, and I ended up spending over 2 hours, and I still didn't get to everything. This right here might be the single most underrated museum in all of Washington, D.C., and almost nobody talks about it, and that's why whether Whether this is your first visit to Washington, D.C., or you are a repeat visitor, maybe a local, I found a hands-down uncrowned jewel. And there is one thing in this mind-bending collection, one specific section that stopped me completely in my tracks. I'll show you exactly what that is in just a few minutes. But let me back up, because how we got here is part of the story. We just wrapped up our morning at the National Zoo. That video is linked above if you haven't seen it yet. We hopped on DC's Red Line at Woodley Park. If you've never used the DC Metro, I want to tell you right now, use it. It's clean, it is easy to navigate, and for getting between Smithsonian stops, it is absolutely the way to go. We rode it straight to Union Station, and if you've ever been through Union Station in DC, even if you're just changing trains, take 5 minutes and look up. That Beaux Arts architecture, the barrel vaulted ceiling, is genuinely beautiful. But today we weren't stopping there. Literally, steps from the Union Station, a building that means serious business, the Smithsonian National Postal Museum. Now I have to be honest, Postal Museum did not light me up when I first saw it on the map. I figured stamps, some old mailboxes, maybe a vintage truck. 45 minutes, in and out. I was in there for several hours. The moment the scale of this place hits you, and it hits you immediately, everything changes. And it is completely 100% free in one of the most expensive cities in the country, and no prior online scheduling like many more of the popular places in DC. For anyone heading to DC this year for America's 250th birthday, and there are going to be millions of people making that trip, write this down: National Postal Museum. It will be one of the highlights of your trip, and I guarantee you almost nobody on your trip will have suggested it. Let me show you what is actually in here, because a list doesn't do it justice. First, look up. This is a real aircraft, a Stinson Reliant, one of the planes used to carry actual U.S. mail in the early days of airmail, hanging right there in the atrium. In 1911, this Wiseman Cook aircraft made the first mail flight officially sanctioned by a U.S. post office, the deadly de Havilland. The Model DH-4B didn't work well for the Postal Service. These suspended airplanes are part of the museum's centerpiece atrium exhibit. The audacity of what the early airmail pioneers were doing, flying across the country in open cockpits to deliver letters. When you're standing under these planes, it becomes real in a way it never does in a textbook. Then there's the railway post office car. You can walk through this restored railway mail car and understand how an entire sorting operation happened. While the train was moving, postal workers memorizing routes, sorting mail by hand in motion. It's one of those I never thought about this and now I can't stop thinking about it moments. And then the stamps. Plan to spend a great deal of your time inside the William H. Gross Stamp Gallery. It is a true treasure chest of one-of-a-kinds. Screens shining with stamps from around the world and historical dates and items are presented in grand detail. Here you will see the world's first postage stamp. It wasn't made in the USA, but the 1840 penny black was issued on May 1st by Great Britain, revolutionizing postal service worldwide. You might be asking, how is this revolutionizing? Well, back then, mail recipients usually paid the postal fees. This flipped that process completely around. Now here is where I have to tell you something. I have never collected a stamp in my life. Admittedly, I have enjoyed buying some really cool ones though. Muscle cars and national parks. I have approximately 0 philatelic credentials, and I stood in front of these cases completely absorbed. The inverted Jenny, for those who don't know, is one of the most famous printing errors in American history. A 1918 airmail stamp where the biplane in the center was accidentally printed upside down. There are examples here. The story of how those stamps entered circulation, the collectors who found them, the prices they commanded, it reads like a mystery novel. But what really got me beyond the objects was a human layer of this museum. Letters from soldiers, mail that crossed oceans during wartime, correspondence between people who were separated by distance in an era when a letter was the only connection. Can you simply imagine not being able to text somebody and know that they read your text just immediately? This museum uses something as ordinary as sending a piece of mail as a window into American history. Expansion, commerce, love, loss. It's quietly profound. With more than 6 million objects, the National Postal Museum has the second largest collection of all Smithsonian museums. Yes, you heard me right. That in itself makes this a bucket list destination. I was overwhelmed. That's the candid word for it. And if you want to be stunned, peruse the National Stamp Collection held in trust. This national treasure illustrates America's history through stamps. Oh look, that's Freedom on that $5 stamp. You know Freedom, the statue on top of the Capitol. What you can find in the frames? Slide the cabinets open to experience the story by seeing the truly amazing stamps for yourself. Okay, I promised you the thing that stopped me completely. The moment I was talking about, it was this, the disaster zone. section. One display calls these postal objects survivors. This key collection was unbelievable. It had items from 9/11, the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood of 1889, stamps from the Great Chicago Fire, from the San Francisco earthquake, the Hindenburg disaster, and even a letter mailed from aboard the RMS Titanic, a street collection box damaged from September 11, 2001, a fire hose nozzle used to battle the fire at the World Trade Center from the windows of the Church Street Station Post Office. This street collection box was damaged on September 11th, and it was located at 90 Church Street across the street from the World Trade Center. This mailbox was scratched, dented, and filled with dust, but its body and mail inside remained intact. The reason the 9/11 display hit me is that this was a major event in history that I lived through. I love history, but a good deal of it occurred prior to my life or before I fell in love with history. I do know exactly where I was on 9/11. I was in Carthage, New York. Where were you? I've been to Johnstown. I've seen where the dam broke, toured the National Park Service Museum, and here at the eye-opening museum is the front of an iron mail collection box that survived the flood. San Francisco is my favorite city, and I even wrote a paper in college on the fire. I really enjoy visiting downtown Chicago and even walked by a Chicago fire station on my way to Navy Pier last year. So seeing all these items are much more real to me, and I hope that you can get to this museum and see some things from places that you've been to make it more real for you. You know, sometimes a museum gives you one thing that you carry home with you. The disaster survivor section was mine. It was also super cool to see different mailboxes from different countries. Small ones, big ones, square ones, tall ones, and they are found at various places throughout the museum. I'm pretty sure that you have heard of Benjamin Franklin. There's a statue of him in the Franklin foyer. Most people can probably list a few of his accomplishments, but did you know that he was the father of the Postal Service of the United States? Plan time to explore the Star Route displays comprised of dog sleds to sitting inside a Freightliner truck and looking upside the White River Junction Woodstock U.S. mail coach. Don't miss any corner or nook and cranny here. I found this sign about the last mule train. Been there, seen that. It's Supai. What an amazing destination. The Postal Service calls the outside of the envelope the cover. And boy, the covers on displays are showstoppers. John Hancock on July 4th? What? That's great for the celebration of the 250th birthday of our nation. For the sleuths, behind the badge is an entire section about postal inspectors and postal crimes that visitors will find compelling. Plus, Systems at Work presents what happens to your letter after you drop it into that mailbox. It's really quite remarkable. And we complain about the cost of a stamp. They have skyrocketed in my lifetime. I really can't imagine having missed this museum, and frankly, I want to go back to dive a little deeper. The Postal Museum deserves way more attention than it gets. The grand, ornate, historic lobby with tall columns, chandeliers, information desk, and banners hanging from the walls is your gateway. After we pulled ourselves away, and it genuinely took effort, we got back on the metro to Federal Triangle. From there, we took the long route, not on purpose, but because lots of the National Mall and the Ellipse past the White House grounds were fenced off for the state's fair. Walking around D.C. never gets old. No matter how many times you've seen it, there is something about walking these streets that feels American, in the best sense. Our destination was the Department of Interior building. As a national park fanatic, I was drawn there, inside a small, easy-to-overlook National Park Service museum. You will need to pass through the typical TSA-type screening, but you will also need to show ID before getting your rite of passage. I'll be straight. This is a compact, modest museum, but there are two things inside that building that justify the effort. Two original Thomas Moran paintings. If you know Moran, his grand Western landscape paintings literally helped convince Congress to establish Yellowstone as the first national park. Seeing his originals in person is a completely different experience than a photograph. The color, the scale, the light, and I did set off the alarm twice. If you are an art person, a national parks person, or both, it's worth the detour. We then caught the train back to Branch Avenue, tired in the best possible way. Now I have to tell you what's coming, because we came back the next day. Early morning train ride into the city, coffee at a recently opened coffee shop, walking the halls of two House of Representatives office buildings, and there's something genuinely surreal about being in those corridors. We retoured the Capitol, had lunch at the Waldorf Astoria, and managed to get into the Smithsonian Castle, which is only open for a limited window right now, and then spent the afternoon at the American History Museum. That is going to be 2 or 3 separate videos. I haven't decided yet. If you are planning a DC trip this year to celebrate the 250 years since our nation's independence from Great Britain, for checking a place off your bucket list for any reason, I hope these videos are useful to you. And if you're watching from your armchair, just enjoying the ride, I'm glad you're here too. That's exactly who I made these videos for. Well, maybe not exactly. I think I made them for also those that are looking to plan their first trip to Washington, D.C. And I imagine that after you make that first trip, you'll be going back for more. We sort of accidentally got inside 2 U.S. House office buildings, walked halls lined with the doors of actual famous representatives, and then toured the Capitol again, all in a single rainy day, right in the middle of the nation's 250th birthday celebrations. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how we did it and what you can do to do the exact same thing on your own trip. My Washington, D.C. playlist is your fast track to visiting this city or becoming enthralled vicariously if you are an armchair traveler. Let's get into it. This was the day 6 of our second Washington, D.C. trip in less than a year, and it started underground. We rode the metro from Branch Avenue into the city, transferred at L'Enfant Plaza, and came up above ground at Capitol South. That's just 2 blocks from the Capitol building itself. Our son had flown in late the night before to join us, and we met him at a spot called Black Crown Collective. What we didn't realize walking in is that this coffee shop is actually located inside one of the 3 House of Representatives office buildings. We'd wandered into Congress without even trying. All right, once we figured out where we were, we couldn't resist walking the halls a little. This building is the Cannon House Office Building, completed in 1908, and it's actually the oldest congressional office building in Washington, D.C. It's also a genuinely beautiful example of Beaux Arts architecture, with high ceilings and long marble corridors. We walked past office after office with nameplates for sitting representatives, and one door happened to be open, so we got a quick look inside. It's a strange feeling being somewhere that normally only shows up on the news. It was fun and interesting to see presentations by some of the more outspoken House members. From there, we found an elevator down to a pedestrian tunnel that connects the House office buildings underneath the street. It leads to a round room lined with glass displays full of historical items tied to Congress. This round room, as I call it, is a pivot point for visitors to reach the 3 legislature buildings and also for members to get inside the Capitol without having to step outside. Quick break. Check the description and the pinned comment below for helpful resources on DC. That tunnel eventually brought us out at the Longworth House office building, where we took a few more photos of office doors and the interior before heading back out the front doors. From there, it's just a walk across Independence Avenue to the Capitol itself. Now, here's the part that made this visit different. My husband and I had already toured the Capitol back in September, but our son hadn't, so with only one day in the city, he wanted to do it. We didn't mind going back. When we got on the tour last time, we did not have advanced ticket reservations, and only because it wasn't peak summer vacation time, we got in. But this time, we had made sure to secure online tickets a few weeks beforehand. A lot of the permanent displays in Exhibition Hall, right behind the Statue of Freedom, were the same as our last visit. I encourage you to watch my Day 4 video. The link is in the description and pinned comment for more in-depth showing off of a tour of the Capitol. This time, there were a number of special items on display tied specifically to the nation's turning 250 years old, and that made even a repeat tour feel worth it. Now let me insert a little wording lesson. Semi means half. Quin means 5. Centennial means 100 years, so that means half of 500 years. 250th anniversary. What is that anniversary? The signing of the Declaration of Independence was in 1776. We will be celebrating the tricentennial in the year 2076. Let me know if you were alive in the bicentennial in 1976. I was. I want to show off this exhibit about individuals who have lain in state or in honor in the Capitol Rotunda. This was compelling. Here are a few. I had completely missed this on our last visit. One thing you will experience when visiting Washington, D.C. is that you will definitely be overwhelmed and miss way more than you thought. That is why I hope my detailed videos give you an edge. In the recess of this display is the 1865 catafalque, constructed to support President Lincoln's casket. It seems that the pine frame continues to be used, but the black cloth is not the actual one, but one similar to the one used. I am just captivated by the model of freedom. The tour itself was good, though a bit less in depth than our first one. Our guide explained it was because they were simply busier that day, which makes sense with the anniversary bringing in more visitors than usual. But this tour guide, who had been working there for decades, pointed out several things that the other guide had not. The one, well, actually the 8 that I want to point out are the plaques representing where 8 congressmen's desks were placed. What you will notice is that all of these men became president. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Then the weather turned on us. It went from cloudy to a real downpour fast. We ended up dashing straight for the metro station just to get out of it, and by the time we sat down for lunch at the Waldorf Astoria, we were completely drenched. It was an overpriced lunch, but after getting soaked running across D.C., it felt earned. Sometimes the best travel stories come from the parts that didn't go according to plan. The hotel is very beautiful, and the gold bathrooms are worth checking out. This is a great place to feel spoiled. So that's a single day, an accidental coffee shop inside Congress, 2 House office buildings, a second Capitol tour that still had something new to offer, and a rainstorm that chased us into a fancy lunch we had planned and were determined to do. If you're planning your own trip to D.C., especially during the 250th celebrations, know that a lot of these Capitol buildings are more walkable and open than people expect. And if you want to see what we did with the rest of that trip, including getting into the Smithsonian Castle, which is open for only a short period of time now, you will want to subscribe and hit the notification bell to see the upcoming video on what we found inside the castle. We strolled through the garden and then explored inside the overwhelming National Museum of American History. Both stops are free Smithsonian institutions. Ugly shoes on the ground. 6 days in Washington, D.C., and we saved something incredible for last. On our final afternoon, we got inside a castle that's barely ever open to the public, walked across the garden that's secretly sitting on top of 2 entire hidden museums, and then spent over 2 hours getting completely lost in one of the most visited museums in the country. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's worth your time in this part of D.C., whether you're planning your own trip or just want to see it from your couch. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. All right, first up, the Smithsonian Castle. This is the original Smithsonian Institution building, and it's been closed for a major renovation for the last few years. But for the nation's 250th birthday, it's temporarily reopening for a short window this summer, with a special exhibit set up for just the occasion. A couple items that stood out to me, not that they all weren't fabulous, but the fragment from the Star-Spangled Banner was breathtaking. You can see the real thing in the National Museum of American History. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. These are the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner by Francis Scott Key. He wrote those in 1814. Another item was the actual copy of the I Have a Dream speech delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. When King departed, he left the copy of his speech on the podium, where it was rescued by an intern named George Reveling, who preserved the document until he shared it with Villanova University, and through them, the Smithsonian. When you walk the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, don't miss the marker where Dr. King stood that day. One other item I want to mention is the lamp by which President George Washington wrote his farewell address, and a George Washington inaugural button. I will stop on this one. Thomas Edison's incandescent light bulb. Edison is an intriguing figure in American history. The National Park Unit in West Orange, New Jersey is a fabulous place. We've also been to his birthplace, home in Milan, Ohio. But here's one of his incandescent light bulbs. If a visit to the castle is on your radar at all, this is a genuinely rare chance to get inside a building most visitors only see from the outside, so it's worth checking the current schedule before you plan around it. Next, right behind the castle is the Enid Hop Garden. It's one of the most peaceful spots on the entire National Mall, with red brick paths and manicured flower beds. But here's what almost nobody realizes while they're standing in it. The garden is basically a roof. Underneath it is a 3-story underground complex built back in the 1980s, and it houses 2 full museums. The National Museum of African Art and the National Museum of Asian Art, along with an education center. The whole thing was built underground on purpose so it wouldn't disturb the historic buildings surrounding it. So next time you're strolling through what looks like a quiet garden, remember you're actually standing on the roof of a hidden museum complex. Quick break. Check the description and the pinned comment below for helpful resources on planning your own DC trip. Okay, back to it. From the garden, we walked over to the National Museum of American History, and this is where we spent over 2 hours and honestly only scratched the surface. This museum is enormous, and we focused on 3 sections: music, the presidency, and war and conflict. In the music section, you'll find Prince's Yellow Cloud guitar, along with the actual clock from the set of 60 Minutes. Just a few steps away are Dorothy's ruby red shoes from The Wizard of Oz. In the presidential section, there are military items connected to both George Washington and Ulysses S. Grant. And in the war and conflict wing, you'll walk right up to a Vietnam-era Huey helicopter, an actual piece of the Berlin Wall, and objects tied to the Watergate scandal. This museum holds the Star-Spangled Banner, the real flag that inspired the national anthem. But that one is so closely guarded and no photos are allowed anywhere near it. And honestly, that's just a handful of what's inside. This museum alone could fill a day or more, and we're already planning to go back. It's about honor. It's about remembering. let's explore Arlington National Cemetery, and specifically the tomb of the unknown soldier and the changing of the guard. 21 steps south, face east 21 seconds, face north 21 seconds. 21 steps north, face east 21 seconds, face south 21 seconds. Repeat until relieved. These tomb guard sentinels, elite volunteer members of the U.S. Army's 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, watch the tomb 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, rain or shine, and have done so for almost 80 years. The tomb has been guarded year-round continuously since 1937, when the first 24-hour guards were posted. Since April 1948, sentinels from the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, also known as the Old Guard, have been watching over the hallowed memorial. Wait till you hear what the state of Vermont has to do with the tomb of the unknown soldier. It's more important than you can imagine. It's beautiful. It's touching. You will want to hang on to find out. The best way to explore Arlington National Cemetery is to go there yourself. As we endeavor on this amazing trip to Arlington National Cemetery, I will also be taking you to other places like Vermont and Luxembourg. Why are we going to Lux? In a video about the unknown soldier and Arlington National Cemetery, you will be amazed. After parking in the great parking garage, you will pass through security and then enter the visitor center, where it is filled with all types of memorabilia. I will show you some of the items in there in an upcoming video. Today we're focusing on the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The best way to experience Arlington National Cemetery is by the trolley tour. Based on the number of funeral services being held that day, the number of stops may be abbreviated, as it was on the day that we visited. Our tour went to the Kennedy family gravesite, the tomb of the unknown soldier, and Arlington House, and returned us to the Welcome Center. If you can walk around this cemetery and explore it and not be choked up a number of times, well, you certainly should be. As we were riding around on the narrated tour bus between stops, and our tour guides would talk about the graves and who was buried here and who was buried there, I couldn't fight back the tears in many occasions. And I think you will feel the same. At the end of this video, I will reveal the connection between George Washington, Robert E. Lee, and Arlington National Cemetery. You won't believe it. You can catch the trolley at any time. They run every 15 minutes throughout the busy day. You may hop on and hop off all day long, and repeating stops as you need to, because you'll realize, oh boy, there was something right around the corner and I missed it. I've got to get back on and take the next stop. I hope that the day you visit, they make more than the 3 stops, because we walked and walked and walked, and it was so hot, but it's worth every minute, because what did these men and women do for our country? Why can't I walk around and honor them and remember them and explore Arlington National Cemetery? Travel across America with me. Today, the property is the final resting place for more than 400,000 active duty service members, veterans, and their families. It is a place to remember the men and women who served their nation, and where all who can visit can gain a sense of their sacrifice. At the stop of the tomb of the unknown soldier, you will disembark in the front of a Corinthian-style amphitheater. This glorious Corinthian-style structure is the Memorial Amphitheater. Take some time to not only see the changing of the guard, but walk around this tremendous architectural masterpiece. It is dedicated to the soldiers. One of the inscriptions reads, "We here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain." This is a gorgeous amphitheater, and I encourage you to walk around and read the inscriptions and appreciate the massive structure and the fabulous architecture. It's simply stunning. There is a tiny little museum, I'll call it, with memorabilia and information about the guards, and a mannequin with the full regalia and the perfect uniform. It's the Tomb Guard Quarters. The Sentinel's Creed. My dedication to this sacred duty is total and wholehearted. In the responsibility bestowed on me, never will I falter, and with dignity and perseverance, my standard will remain perfection. Through the years of diligence and praise and the discomfort of the elements, I will walk my tour in humble reverence, to the best of my ability. It is he who commands the respect I protect. His bravery that made us so proud. Well, I'm choking up just reading this. Surrounded by well-meaning crowds by day, alone in the thoughtful peace of night, this soldier will in honored glory rest under my eternal vigilance. Simon, 1971. Under authority of Public Resolution 67 of the 66th Congress, approved March 4, 1921, an unknown American soldier was exhumed from each of the 4 American cemeteries in France. They were placed in identical caskets and assembled at Chalon-sur-Marne. The unknown soldier was selected on October 24, 1921. Sergeant Edward F. Younger, U.S. Army, carrying a spray of white roses, entered the room where the 4 unmarked flag-draped caskets were resting. He slowly circled, silently placing the rose on one of the caskets. Thus, the unknown soldier was officially designated. The 3 remaining unknowns were then returned to the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery. The unknown soldier was placed aboard the U.S. cruiser Olympia, which arrived at the nation's capital on November 9, 1921. The honored remains were taken to the rotunda of the United States Capitol to rest in state until Armistice Day. On November 11th, the unknown soldier was moved to the Memorial Amphitheater in Arlington National Cemetery. After services in the amphitheater, the remains were borne to the sarcophagus for brief committal rites. The impressive ceremony closed with 3 salvos of artillery, the sounding of taps, and the national salute. And as you continue to read the sign while you were there, you will learn how other unknowns were designated as the unknown soldier. For example, the 79th Congress approved on June 24, 1946, for 13 unknown Americans who lost their lives while serving overseas in the armed forces of the United States during World War II to be exhumed from American cemeteries in Europe and Africa and shipped in identical caskets to Epinal, France. Major General Edward J. O'Neill, U.S. Army, on May 12, 1958, solemnly chose from among these caskets one to be designated as the transatlantic candidate unknown. The remaining unknown Americans were reinterred, and the plaque continues to explain how this was done other times. This is a very solemn and grave place, and one that we should honor and respect.
Order! On!
What does Vermont have to do with the tomb of the unknown soldier? Vermont is synonymous with marble, and we were fortunate to tour the Vermont Marble Exhibit and Museum. And inside, one of the most compelling things was the information on the tomb of the unknown soldier. Yes, they have an exact replica of the tomb of the unknown soldier, and you can step in and look at the information, the blueprints, and the procedures of how it was constructed and transported to Arlington National Cemetery. Simply incredible. There's so much to learn about the tomb of the unknown soldier, and it reaches into not only France, but Vermont. This was one of the most interesting pictures. It had this sign on the side, Monument to Unknown Soldier, Arlington Cemetery, Washington, from Colorado Quarries of Vermont Marble Company. The loaded rail car equipped with the Vermont Marble Company's advertising sign left Proctor and traveled to Washington, D.C. The finishing details were carved on site, transforming the block into the tomb of the unknown soldier. I bet that was a bit of unknown history also. This is the original blueprint plan for the construction of the tomb of the unknown soldier, dated 1929. The contract price was $14,200 less freight of $721.50 and the builder's discount of $266.05 totaled $13,312.45. FOB, Vermont. All you accountants know exactly what that meant. On March 4th, 1921, the United States Congress approved a resolution providing for the burial of an unknown and unidentified American soldier of World War I in Arlington National Cemetery Memorial Amphitheater. President Warren G. Harding officiated at the first interment ceremony at the tomb of the unknown soldier on Armistice Day, November 11th, 1921. Soldiers never die until they are forgotten. Tomb guards never forget. On August 3, 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a bill to select and pay tribute to the unknown soldiers of World War II and Korea. The internment of these unknowns took place on Memorial Day, 1958. President Eisenhower awarded each the Medal of Honor. The unknowns were then interred in the plaza in front of the tomb beside their comrade of World War I. The Vietnam unknown service member was interred at the tomb of the unknown soldier on Memorial Day, May 28, 1984. President Reagan presided over the funeral and presented the Medal of Honor to the Vietnam unknown. The remains of the Vietnam unknown were exhumed May 14, 1998, based on mitochondrial DNA testing. Department of Defense scientists identified the remains of those of Air Force First Lieutenant Michael Joseph Basin, who was shot down near An Lac, Vietnam in 1972. It had been decided that the crypt that contained the remains of the Vietnam unknown will remain vacant. Guys, I can't help but cry when I read this for you, and I will be going to a little bit more detail about the soldiers that were placed in the tomb's honor. As you walk through the cemetery, you may see a horse-drawn caisson carrying an American flag-draped casket, hear the firing of the 3 rifle volleys in the distance, or feel a lump in your throat as a lone bugler plays the 24 lingering notes of taps. These honors remind us of service, sacrifice, and valor. The property is the final resting place for more than 400,000 active-duty service members, veterans, and their families. It is a place to remember the men and women who served their nation, and where all who can visit can gain a sense of their sacrifice. While we were there was a celebration, memorial service for the Battle of the Bulge. That was an incredible blessing, as our son lived in Luxembourg for a while and had been to the American National Cemetery there to see the grave of George S. Patton, Jr., General, 3rd Army, California, December 21, 1945. The Luxembourg American Cemetery is the only American military cemetery in Luxembourg. General George S. Patton Jr. is buried there, just below the terrace wall, about halfway between the flagpoles. 5,076 war dead of the United States of America from World War II rest here. Most died in the fighting north of the city and eastward to the Rhine during the winter of 1944 and the spring of 1945, as well as in air operations over the regions. Additionally, the names of 371 Americans whose remains were never recovered or not identified are inscribed on the 2 stone pylons below the chapel on the paved terrace. 2 stars mark the names of those who were subsequently found. 101 headstones mark the graves of the unknowns. Unknown soldiers are not only at Arlington, but at other places honoring our military abroad. Therefore, it was extra special to be able to be, at a distance of course, at the Battle of the Bulge ceremony there at Arlington National Cemetery. I encourage you to go there as soon as you can, to honor, to remember, and to explore. I hope that you will subscribe and watch more of my videos that capture traveling through this fabulous nation and exploring and appreciating our American history. Steeped in history, Arlington National Cemetery's scenic landscape is a living shrine to honor our servicemen and women and the rich heritage of our country. Arlington National Cemetery is located on land that once belonged to George Washington's step-grandson, George Washington Parke Custis. In 1857, Custis left the property to his daughter, Mary Anna Rudolph Custis, and it became the family home for her and her husband, Robert E. Lee. After the Lee family vacated the property at the onset of the Civil War in 1861, the grounds were used for various purposes, including serving as a camp and headquarters for federal troops during the Civil War, and later providing a safe haven for former slaves seeking freedom. Arlington National Cemetery held its first military burial on May 13, 1864. The tomb has a flat-faced form and is relieved at the corners and along the sides by neoclassical pilasters, set into the surface with objects and inscriptions carved into the sides. The 1931 symbolism of the objects on the north, south, and east sides changed over time. On the north-south panel are 3 wreaths on each side representing a world of memories. Each wreath has 38 leaves and 12 berries. The east panel that faces Washington, D.C. are the Greek figures representing peace, victory, and valor. On the west panel is inscribed, "Here rest in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." Tennis shoes on the ground, an unclassic road trip at Arlington National Cemetery.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? I'm Sentinel Rat of the 3rd Infantry Regiment, United States Army. Guard of Honor, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. The ceremony that you are about to witness is the changing of the guard. In keeping with the dignity of this ceremony, it is requested that everyone remain silent and stand. Thank you. Shoulder. Arms. Forward. March. Guards. Halt. Forward. March. Guards. Halt. Port. Arms. Ready. Face. Present. Arms. Port. Arms. Ready. Face. Pass. On your orders.
Halt and order. Remain as directed.
Order. Acknowledge. Ready. Face. Present. Arms. Right. Shoulder. Arms. Pose. Right. Face.
Please let me know if you are planning a visit to Washington, D.C., or as an armchair traveler, you are completely content with this presentation. Thank you for watching, commenting, and subscribing. I appreciate every one of you. And classic road trip.